Good morning and welcome to the pre-agenda interview for Wednesday, May 1st, 2024, relative to Bills 2024-357 and 2024-378. We have one appointment for the Housing Opportunity Fund Advisory Board and one appointment for the Planning Commission. Will the clerk please read the title of the bill?
Bill 357, Resolution Amending Resolution 696 of 2021, appointing Jerome Jackson as a member of the Housing Opportunity Fund Advisory Board with a term to expire April 30th, 2027. And Bill 378, a resolution appointing Steve Mazza as a member of the Planning Commission with a term to expire January 1st, 2030.
Thank you. For the record, we're joined by Council President Councilman Lavelle and Council Member Warwick, who is joining us remotely. So this is going to be conversational, and although you've been nominated to serve on different boards and commissions, we're taking both at once. So I'll start with you, Mr. Jackson. Would you like to introduce yourself and just give us a little bit of background? And you can leave your microphones. Feel free to just leave them in the on position while you're up here.
Great. My name is Jerome Jackson. I am a resident of the city of Pittsburgh. Live at 1623 Antrim Street on the north side. I'm currently the executive director of the Northside Leadership Conference. And before that, I was the executive director of Operation Better Block in Homewood. I have about 15, 20 years experience in community development, community consensus building, also experience in mediation, conflict resolution, and some arbitration as well.
Great. And you've been nominated to serve on the Housing Opportunity Fund Advisory Board. Can you tell us a little bit about your interest in this particular issue and why you'd like to serve?
Sure. So I was actually on the Housing Opportunity board before, the advisory board, when I was the rep for the East End. I just think that it is very important to address the issues that we have around housing, especially around the affordability of housing. I think the Housing Opportunity Fund has opened up the opportunity for example, small landlords, right, who, they may not have those 20 or 30 units, but they are, vital to the neighborhood in providing housing. So providing a program for someone who owns 1 or 2 units to be able to get some money to fix it up to provide good housing, clean and safe housing is just a great thing. I think also the process that I really like about the advisory board is that we ask the community their input on how these funds should be used, and are we doing a great job? And and I think every year looking at that and looking at how we allocate those funds is very, very important.
Thank you. I want to leave time for other members before I ask some questions. So, Mr. Mazza, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Steve Mazza. I live at 2912 Zephyr Avenue, Pittsburgh, PA 15204. That is Sheridan neighborhood. I've been in the construction industry. Well, I could say it like this. I knew what a mortar box and a hoe was whenever I mixed mortar for my dad when I was like 7, 8 years old. So I've been in construction well over 50 years. I've been a council rep for the Carpenters Union for 17 years. I've worked in development. It's part of my position, understanding the residential piece of it to the commercial end of it. I believe in responsible development. I believe in, things have to work in the city of Pittsburgh, and things aren't always as easy in the city, and I'm here to help and work and move forward with that.
That's great. And you sort of answered it, but anything to add as to why you're interested in serving on the Planning Commission?
I believe we need fair and equitable and responsible development. We do need affordable housing, but we do need commercial development. Downtown conversion is very important, but also we need to have a mix of incomes. We need to have low, middle, and high-ranging incomes to support everything that the city stands for and what we need to survive. So it's a mixture of a lot of different things. I think I bring that to the table, understanding and having the ability to work with people and coming to a compromise and not always a stalemate.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, thank you both for your willingness to serve. I'll turn it over to my colleagues. I will take them first. Council President Lavelle, and then we'll move to Council Member Warwick. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. I don't really actually have a question. I just wanted to come out to both say thank you. I've worked with you both for years now. I have the highest regard for you both. And I really just want to thank you for your willingness to serve in these capacities. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You. Councilperson Warwick, do you have any questions?
Yeah, hi, how are you? Sorry I'm not there today, I'm a little under the weather. Thank you both for your willingness to serve. I do have actually sort of one question for each of you separately. So I guess I'll start with Steve. I know that he's heard me ask this question before. So, you know, I know you're very interested in workforce development, and I know that you are acutely aware of the need for skilled labor, right, to do all this building that we're talking about. Sort of in your role on the planning commission, or where do you see the planning commission being able to come up with ways either to encourage or perhaps even to compel private developers to help us as a city do what we need to do to develop that workforce so that we can, like you were saying, create provide the incomes and the skill sets to the young people here today so that they can stay in Pittsburgh and live in these mixed income housing developments and neighborhoods and all of this sort of ideal that we picture for Pittsburgh.
Thank you for the question, Councilperson Warwick. First of all, it starts with education. I believe that we need to educate the commission members first to discuss what we're trying to achieve in the city of Pittsburgh. I'm working with the mayor's office on the workforce hub. I'm a part of that, writing the language to help each and every person coming out of underserved neighborhoods. It's a very important piece of what I do in my role with my organization. And it's very important that the developers understand that they can't just come into town without trying to use our workforce, trying to develop our workforce, bringing contractors in from the other areas. I've been to many planning commission meetings. I've seen one of the main questions would always be, have you talked to the communities? Have you talked to the community groups? That's the first and foremost, but we need to educate everybody how important it is. Have we discussed, can we bring anybody in to work from the neighborhoods? What is our diversity? Where are we at? Are we bringing young men and women in? What are we doing to help sustain this and help the private industry understand who Pittsburgh is and what type of workforce we really need?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with that, and I hope it would be great if the Planning Commission could also work together, because PPS has some great QTE programs I know in healthcare and field. It would be great to see more of that, so more of our high school kids kind of getting that exposure and having those opportunities at a young age.
And one last thing, the only way we're going to expand that is to educate people, to help them understand how important workforce development is, how important it is to let our young people understand there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that if they're in 7th, 8th grade, that maybe they want to be in the trades, maybe they don't even understand how to get into the trades or anything like that. We have to go into the schools and treat everybody equally and let them know there is a path that they can succeed without worrying about going into their neighborhood and turning left instead of turning right. So we have to be their mentors. We have to be there to help them understand everything.
Yeah, it's funny. At the city, just last week, I think we had the take your kids to school day, and I brought my two youngest, very young, right, like 7 and 9, and the carpenters, the city carpenters, had a table set up, and they had drills and drill bits and whatever. And my two little kids, they were just standing there, and their demo was to let the kids put in a drill and then pull it back, put in a drill and then pull it back out again, right? Like using the drill. And they loved it. And it was so neat to and that was so small. It was like literally 3 minutes, right? And just like how interested they were. And it's like, God, if they could do that that's very young, but at that young age, just like for an hour a week, right? Just playing with tools and what can you do and what can you build? If we could just have that happening at an early age, I feel like we could get somewhere.
And one last thing here. I know our training center's outside of the city of Pittsburgh. It's in Robinson or Collier Township, but whoever's listening on the call right now on the city channel, we are having our open house on Saturday, May 4th from 8 until 3. Everybody's welcome to come out and see our design build, and see what our millwrights do, what our carpenters do, what everybody does. Bring your family, whatever, everybody's welcome. And we usually get about around 1,000 people that shows up and experiences what we actually do. So it's an opportunity for people that are out there right now to come and visit us, or go online and look at our website as well. Thank you.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, great. So Mr. Jackson, I do have a question for you. So one thing I know Councilwoman Gross, who isn't here right now, but and myself are very interested in is the work through the Housing Opportunity Fund, the funding for mediation and counsel for folks who are facing eviction. And it's something that I would love to see expanded, right? So that folks in Pittsburgh both have a right to mediate, so that landlords and tenants, have access to mediation services, and also if unfortunately those mediation services either aren't accessed or happen to not not get them where they need to be, have right to counsel in eviction proceedings. I would love to get your thoughts on that. I know that it costs money. I think we're doing it in, we're doing it in some of the magistrate courts now, but not all. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, thank you for the question. Mediation, I believe in mediation. So mediation was kind of like my first love before even community development. I actually sit on the board of Just Mediation Pittsburgh. And so I've been working with them around the whole landlord-tenant, and we've been working and talking about expanding those services, within the city, and even expanding services just to community mediation. So I will definitely continue to work with, using my position on the Housing Opportunity Advisory Board, as well as my position on the Just Mediation Pittsburgh Board, to bring those two together so that we can have some really good mediation services. I think that the program that we are currently involved in, we have helped so many residents with issues with their landlords. And what we found out is that in training our mediators is that, a lot of what we start out with is about this money and rent, but then when they get down and they're really having conversation, there are other issues that need to be resolved. And so we're taking a look at those things and how our mediators help resolve the issues that are outside of what the program says they should be looking at to resolve. So I definitely would love to bring, and we'll work hard to bring those kinds of programs and services to the board.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, just also for fellow members and anyone else who's listening, as we start to head into budget season for 2025, that is certainly something that, and the results from the mediation that has been done so far are really astonishing. The numbers are very impressive for both the mediation and also the having counsel, just the numbers for keeping people in their homes, saving money for landlords, right? Because evictions are very expensive. They can cost up to $5,000 or so. That is a program I would love to see expanded, and I look forward to talking more about that.
Yep, absolutely.
Going forward. Okay, well, that's it for me. Thank you so much, and thanks to you both for for your willingness to serve. Have a good
Thank you.
day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilperson. We've been joined by Councilman Wilson, Councilman Bobby Wilson. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And welcome back to the table for you all.
Yes.
Well, I just wanted to thank you all for your willingness to serve. I had one question for each of you. Steve, I'll go first. What are you looking forward to in this quasi-judicial role at city planning? What's the
Help move development forward, obviously in a fair and equitable way, and trying to help the commission and the people of the city of Pittsburgh to understand that there is more to the commission's meeting than stormwater. Are you meeting with the communities? There's workforce development. There's other things that need to be solved, and that can help. It also can help to be solved with the way we can talk to developers and the people that are trying to, use our city.
Okay. Well, thank you for all the work that we've done together and everything you do for the city of Pittsburgh. And looking forward to your service, or your continued service. And Jerome, good seeing you last night.
Yes, it was.
At the at the new park
light up,
opening.
the
Yeah,
light
light up night. We're calling it light up night. Yeah, so the lights did come on when it got dark out. Yeah, we're talking about the Allegheny Commons segment B and C of the Commons renovation. So just cut the ribbon on that last night. Nice to have your words about your time in the park playing as a child. And wanted to ask you a question about being on the Housing Opportunity Fund. What's something that you're looking forward to getting accomplished on the Housing Opportunity Fund?
So one of the things that I'm looking forward to, and I know we had conversations when I was on the advisory board once, before, is how do we keep the fund continuing? Like, how do we put a plan together? And they may have already been working on it. I haven't been involved in a while, but putting something together so that the fund continues to do the work. And not after the tax dollars go away, the fund goes away. So how do we keep the fund going? How do we fund it? Where do we get monies from? So I'm really interested in that. I think that the fund has done such good work that it'll just be for naught if it has to go away after because of the way it's set up. But just really working to make sure that it stays around and that it is something that we can use and be a part of for years and years to come.
All right, well, thanks. And thanks for the work that you do for the North Side.
Thank you.
And looking forward to your continued service as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. So I actually think that we've covered a lot. A lot of the questions that I had, wanting to learn more about your background and your past service and your thoughts on these issues have been covered. So I really just want to reiterate what's already been said. Thank you for your willingness to serve and continue to serve. These are both two, as we think about growing the city, as we think about growing all our neighborhoods and lifting all neighborhoods, these are among the most important advisory boards and commissions that I can think of. So thank you both, each of you, for your service and the time that you'll be putting in. Really, really do appreciate it. Any further questions or comments from council members who are joining us? Seeing none, and having exhausted the business of this pre-agenda interview, this meeting is adjourned. Good morning and welcome to the Standing Committee's meeting for Monday, May 1st, 2024. All council meetings will be live streamed on the city's website. For guest speakers, please do not turn your microphones off. And our first order of business is roll call. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Mr. Sharland, Mr. Coghill, Ms. Gross.
Here.
Mr. Lavelle. Here. Mr. Mosley.
Here.
Mrs. Cal Smith. Mrs. Warwick.
Here.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Ms. Strasburger, Chair.
Here.
6 members present.
Thank you. Our next order of business is public comment. I would like to remind all speakers that the rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern, official action, or deliberation which are or may be before City Council. Profanity will not be permitted. Please state your name and neighborhood for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. And our first, we do not have any registered speakers, so any speakers who wish to come to the podium may do so today, right now.
Hi, my name is Michael. I'm a Pennsylvania resident, I guess, for now. I just wanted to talk about the things that we need in the city. I've been talking to a lot of people. We're out walking on the streets, and we need more water buffaloes, the public bathrooms, and we need to start renovating the vacant houses and stop gentrifying, bringing new businesses in when we have all these unoccupied homes. And we have a homeless epidemic here in the great state of Pittsburgh that needs to be addressed by City Council and our good members here. We need to be able to take the vacant homes and renovate them, or whether it be the prison, and start incentivizing the community to build economic development for everybody. Like, can we, in New York, I saw something on the news where they put e-cig stations where you guys could generate revenue that way without raising taxes, because we can't raise taxes. By doing that, we have to find new innovative ways to raise more money for the great city of Pittsburgh. And I want to just open a discussion and help people come up with ideas and have a meeting and start being a member of our community instead of there be a separation between me, you, and anyone else. We're all one, you know? And I just want us all to come together as one and come up with creative solutions that are equitable for the people and equitable for the city and the great state of Pennsylvania. And that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
My name is Yvonne F. Brown. I live at 715 Mercer Street up in the Hill District. The building that I tell you that we citizens as seniors are being mistreated. There's a lady that calls in, McMullen. When she came down, we went to lunch. And so we were talking, and then she said, "Where do you live at, Miss Brown?" I said, "Katie, wherever." She said, "Oh my goodness." Her husband, before he died, he was the chief fireman. He said they treat them old people bad. Now, he was an upstanding man. Why won't you listen when we come down and say we have a problem in the building? Okay, you got the mayor down in the cellar bringing proclamation and a plaque to Saludine's brother, who just moved in the building from California. He's cleaning up in front of August Wilson's building, where August Wilson was. Okay, so when I see, you know, that's, to me, that's nepotism and then the political crony. So anyway, I was really upset because when I was in the building all these years, Eunice Howes ran that building. She was the president. Now she done died. The brother, he's supposed to be the baby of the family. He didn't come back to take over the building. Now I'm standing and talking to one of our residents, an older black man. He's in a wheelchair. Well, here come Reggie, and they're going to do something about this 4th floor and got to talk about what they're going to do in the building and so on. Then he said, "Oh, excuse me, I'm just venting." And the white man, the older white man said, "Miss Brown, what office is he running for?" Well, he is now the vice president of our tenant council. And they're showing preference to this man. Every month they put the people's birthdays. Okay, so they got papers, they got the date, the birthday, and they got one whole page that says Reggie Howes. They are showing favoritism. Now, I got this statement from Janet Reno when I'm saying, "I give you honor and praise. You were a woman of your word. You did as you said. You answered my concerns about Johnny Gamage and Pittsburgh police and their Gestapo tactics." She has seen a sign. I was at Duquesne University. She seen the sign I had made. Them women was dynamite. They put it so, and she was talking. Then she stops and she said, I I see you want to talk to me, but I have a meeting. Write me and I will answer you. And she did. She kept her word. Just like this. We've asked you to make the announcements whenever you're any deviation from Tuesday and Wednesday to make it the first thing you talk about, and you don't. Sometimes, if I hadn't been going through Oakland last week, a couple weeks ago, there's a young man that be sitting back here. I asked him to speak. He won't speak. But when I took and riding past, he said a meeting. That's the only reason why I knew that the meeting was not the same.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, I'm Bernadette from Beachview. On my way in here this morning, first I want to say what they're doing on Broadway with the extended curbs, I love them. And some of the naysayers are actually coming around and saying, gee, I actually like what's going on at the top of Bowstead. But Nassau, we have a problem. I came down Realty at the corner of Realty, Coast, and Broadway. Somebody had a little bit too many margaritas when they placed the ADA little yellow ramp things. They don't line up. Like my interview with KDKA, Sidewalks to Nowhere, that's what you're going to have, and I'm not going to sit back. So I went down, found the supervisor down at Hampshire. He came up, and he's bound to what the city designed. He showed it to me on his phone, and he said, oh my gosh, it's going to be a problem over there too, on that corner. I said, yes. So before this is completed, somebody needs to go back and fix that, because when you follow the little piano key lines or the zebra lines, you're going to be hit with as I did this morning, a curb, and force me way out into traffic now, away from those little ghost bike lanes. I mean, literally, it's going to force me to the trolley tracks. I'm an old hippie. I have no problem parking my chair right in the middle of Broadway and stopping traffic until that gets addressed. Danny Berkowitz, Atlas Corporations, all their LLCs, 1723 Broadway. We now have, as my grandson would call them, here kitty, 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 little rats running up Realty Avenue, because this apartment building house is overwrought with garbage. There's 3 dogs inside that nobody ever walks and brings out. But yeah, the rats coming up the middle of Realty Avenue, nah. I did look it up, and it is one of Dan Berkowitz's failed properties. And across the street from that, the backside of 1703, they have all the garbage piled up, and the little rats come and get their morning lunch and brunch and whatever. It looks great, but they made a mistake at Coast and Broadway and Realty, and I got the supervisor of the construction. Big mistake. We were like, seriously.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Any further speakers? There being no further speakers, we will now move on to our standing committee's agenda. And our first committee is Finance and Law, chaired by myself. We'll start with deferred papers.
Bill 89, Resolution Amending Resolution 909 of 2023, entitled Resolution Authorizing the Fee Schedule for 2024, pursuant to Chapter 170 of the City Code, to reduce the cost of employee parking.
Motion to hold 2 weeks.
Second.
Motion and a second to hold 2 weeks. Discussion? All those in favor of a 2-week hold, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Bill will be held for 2 weeks.
Bill 256, Ordinance Amending and Supplementing the Pittsburgh Code Title II Fiscal, Article 9, Property Taxes, by creating a new Chapter 268, Real Estate Tax Exemptions for Constructions or Adaptive Reuse of Buildings in Downtown Pittsburgh.
Motion to approve. Discussion?
Second.
With discussion, Councilman Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to thank all members who, voted for everyone voted for the amendment. We all came together and really put together a bill that I think will make a difference for downtown. I want to thank my staff. I want to thank everyone else involved, including the mayor's office, Jake Paula, Kyle Chinalopoli, everyone involved. I want to thank Sean. Is usually where I take some pauses here because I'm trying to remember everyone who, played a part in this. All the partners downtown, Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership. We have other entities like the Allegheny Conference, the trades. I thank Greg Bernarding, thank Darren Kelly. I want to thank 32BJ, Sam Williamson, and all the workers that support this. So I may remember some more people I want to thank as I continue, but this is the preliminary vote to go to the final vote, hopefully to go to the final vote in next week. And this bill is really important for one simple reason, is to save, a quarter of our real estate tax base. I believe it's important that we make sure that the downtown towers don't stay vacant and that there is a way that they can see a new life. I think this bill will accomplish that, at least provide a really good tool. One of the several tools that will be used, that's the Local Economic Revitalization Act, gives us the power to, have this tax abatement bill for us to vote on this, to allow this to happen, to create a forum for investors and developers to and owners to go forward and put together a project to make sure that that building will see a new life. So looking forward to this bill so that we can see more affordable housing downtown, brand new office space, because office space looks different. Hopefully opportunities like childcare within these properties, because we know that's an important thing for workers, so that gets everyone to work. And so there's that new life, but then there's also the ability to maintain our tax base so that we can pave the roads and keep everyone safe. So with that, looking forward to the vote today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further comments? Second round, Councilman Wilson.
I want to thank Council President Lavelle. I told you I'd do this. I told you So I'd be remiss if I mentioned the great work that Councilman Lavelle did on this bill to bring people together, but also, as my partner downtown, we represent downtown together on the side of council, and appreciate our partnership and looking forward to more ways to solve the issues that downtown will face in this new era. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I just really want to congratulate you, Councilman Wilson, congratulate you, Council President Lavelle, and thank you for all your hard work over the last several months, and particularly a couple weeks in there where we were really, it was all consuming, I understand. So thank you and congratulations. Any further comments?
I'll make it brief. I do want to really thank Councilman Wilson. I want to thank you for your leadership, in starting this process. I was proud to co-sponsor and stand with you at the unveiling of this piece of legislation downtown at the Cabaret Theater. And I want to thank all the colleagues on council who were willing to come to the table and have some really tough conversations and work through some really stark differences and different perspectives in deciding how can we find a legislative vehicle that addressed the variety of concerns, from the importance of ensuring that these buildings are converted and that we stop this downward spiral that's happening to our downtown property, but also address the really, that was interesting. I think the very valid, concerns about our affordable housing crisis. So our ability to be able to bring, those two sometimes diverging perspectives, together and bring developers and unions and business owners and affordable housing advocates, all together behind one piece of legislation, I think, really shows, the ability that we have as a body to truly be transformational. I also want to thank Council President for his leadership, but all my fellow members was really proud to be part of that process. So congratulations, Councilman Wilson.
Thank you. Any further comments? Oh, sorry, Councilman Charlin.
Well, I just, again, I want to reiterate, how thankful I am for Councilman Wilson's leadership here and for keeping us all in the loop as we're going through this process and really working with all the stakeholders from labor to housing advocates and everywhere in between to try and find, a solution that we can all pass here. Thank you, and again, your staff, specifically Mohammed, for making this happen. Especially as staff, I always want to acknowledge staff, or being former staff, I always want to acknowledge staff because I know how much work they put in to make us look good. And you're lucky there, Councilman Wilson. You've got a good one. But I also want to reiterate here, and with a little bit of caution on this bill, that I don't want this council to end up in a position where we're too prescriptive on what housing affordability means. This is not an academic exercise for me. I believe the only member here who is still a renter, and I'm looking in the housing market right now, and prices just continue to grow and grow and grow. And as we have a lot of concern here for affordable housing, and I think that's great, we also need to make sure that we're not stifling growth with our mandates here. The only way that we can really increase housing affordability is to flood the market with new units. And I'm sitting here as, again, not an academic exercise. This is me on Zillow trying to figure out my next steps here, that I need people from my district to move into downtown so that I can buy their house. And, and I need that to happen, and then someone can move into my house, and then someone can move into the house before them. And that's how we increase affordability here within the city. And, I hope that we don't become too prescriptive in our affordability mandates, that we no longer can increase the market and frankly, take power away from the landlords. If we want to take power away from the landlords, we need to have a surplus of housing so that renters have more power within this market. So, again, I want to thank you for this bill. Thank you for your continued investment into downtown. But I do want to put that word of caution out there. So, thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of Bill 250, my apologies. Councilperson Warwick.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Wilson, for working with everyone to get this over the finish line. I do sort of, in regard to Councilman Charlin's comments, ultimately these projects go through. This is a big tax break, right? That's what this is. This is taxpayer money that will be, that developers downtown will get, a tax break they will get paid for by the residents of Pittsburgh so that they can redevelop their properties, right? This is not a tax break that mom and pop landlords get for redeveloping their properties. This is not a tax break that I get for, doing work on my house. So I think that's important to remember. So that's why, I'm glad that Council President is organizing a working group to make sure that the developers who are pursuing these projects take advantage of the wealth of tools available to them that will enable them to create housing that is affordable to lots of different kinds of people, right? That includes vouchers, that includes, any number of URA programs, et cetera. Okay, so we want to make sure that these developers are doing the right thing, and that is, I'm glad that that is in there, at the very least, that if they are going to do housing at what I think a very modest number of those units need to be affordable, but remember that they can reach that affordability without taking any haircut whatsoever by using the tools that are out there, vouchers being primarily among them, and that would mean in turn that downtown can actually become a diverse neighborhood, right? Residential neighborhood, which is of course the vision that is sort of being sold here, and not just the place for people to buy luxury condos. Because at the end of the day, if I live in Councilman Charlotte, I'm familiar with the neighborhood where you live. I know in my neighborhood, no one in my neighborhood is going to be leaving their single family home with their 2 or 3 kids to go move into a downtown condo. So this trickle down housing concept it's a nice concept, but I don't really see it playing out that way. What we need to do is build the housing that the people of Pittsburgh need today, right? And for the most part, if we look at all the studies that we've done in Pittsburgh, that is family housing. So I think we can do that. I think that the developers can do that. I think that this is a great tool, but it's not going to be easy, and it's going to take doing things a little bit differently than the private development market has been doing in Pittsburgh, at least over the past 10 years since I've been here, which is just doing, wall-to-wall luxury condos. And so, yeah, it will be interesting to see. And thanks, Councilman Wilson, for doing this bill. I know it wasn't easy, but I'm glad that we all got somewhere where we could agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Third round, Councilman Wilson.
Thanks. I appreciate the conversation here. It reminds me of the days of when we negotiated this bill. And I just wanted to highlight that there's been a lot of great conversations. I think what's come out of this is that a lot of us have fundamental disagreements about what this bill should do. And so I keep saying the word tool, but quite frankly, I think we've created a multi-tool here. And I think, Councilman Charlton, you bring up a lot of great points, and I think Councilwoman Moore brings up great points as well. And, to that effect, I think as you see it, there's 2 fundamental different ways that what we think we're going to try and accomplish here. And that's why we have this multi-tool. You can walk into Home Depot and buy the multi-tool that can sand and cut, but it's not going to be able to be as strong and effective as a saw that you would, a circular saw that you would buy, or a 6-inch sander, So I think we have to all keep that in mind, and that's why there is a committee that is going to monitor this. There is an annual report from the controller that will be done. And we may have to come back and revisit this, and maybe make it just one tool instead of being a multi-tool. So, or at least one arm of the multi-tool was stronger than the other eventually. So we'll see. And I look forward to that conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. With that, all those in favor with Bill 256, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. That brings us to new papers. Bill 397.
Bill 397, ordinance amending the Pittsburgh Code Title I Administrative Fiscal, Article 11, Human Resources, Chapter 192, Pensions, Section 192.27, Death Benefits, by allowing the Municipal Pension Fund to approve adjustments to the Table of Survivor Benefit Conversion Rates as mortality rates change.
Can I get a motion?
So moved. Discussion?
Second.
Second.
Second with discussion, Councilman Wilson.
Mind coming to the table just to give a quick brief on what we're looking at here?
Good morning, Patrick Cornell, Chief Financial Officer. Today I am here actually representing Mayor Gainey as his proxy on the Municipal Pension Board. Good morning. Gino Palmasina, Director of the City of Pittsburgh Municipal Pension Fund.
Peter McDevitt, City Council Budget Director, and I also sit on the Municipal Pension Board as Council President's proxy.
All right, thanks. Can one of you briefly describe what we're looking at here? What this bill would do?
Sure. So what we realized in the course of our regular monthly board meetings last year is that our actuarial table, which measures the rates at which we have, all right, I got to back it up. There is a spousal death benefit. So when an employee retires, he or she can choose to reduce his monthly earnings from the pension in order, in his or her untimely passing, that benefit will continue on to his or her spouse. The way those numbers are set are based on an actuarial table. The rates that are set based on statistics about death. We have not updated this table in 40 years. So we started a subcommittee within the pension board to take a look at what it would take to update this table. And after a few months of research and working with the actuaries, we, as the Municipal Pension Board, have passed its own motion to come to council recommending the changes before you at the table. So that is the overarching summary, but I'll let Mr. Palmasina.
So basically you're changing, like the length of time that we see life expectancy and all those things because 40 years ago.
Correct.
Those numbers were different.
Correct.
And then based on that, there's more, help me understand how the revenue plays a part with, or not revenue, how the pension, the actual funds play a part with, like how that's distributed.
Sure. Yeah, so first I will mention the legislation is just to give the board the power to change the table, the rates based off mortality. But like Mr. Cornell mentioned, upon retirement, any city employee that's vested and eligible for a pension has the opportunity to elect. It's not a requirement to elect the spousal benefit option, which again would reduce your pension amount to protect your spouse, who would, upon the employee's death, the pensioner's death, would receive half of the monthly pension benefit. But as far as the study that the subcommittee did with the tables, you're looking at a very, very small change from the old table that was done in 1983 to based off mortality rates now. And from the fiscal standpoint, the election that someone makes to lower their monthly payment out is what is supposed to pay for that ongoing survivor benefit. So from the fiduciary standpoint, when we haven't changed that in a while, we wanted to make sure that the funds that are being kind of withheld from the employee for those benefits that are paid out, we wanted to make sure that it was up to date, so that the health of the fund remains solvent.
All right, thanks.
Any further comments?
A picture of Gino at the table.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 397, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Thank you.
Can I also congratulate Gino Palmasina for being Coach of the Year?
Yeah, that's right.
Coach.
Good job.
Didn't think he was going to get away with me from that.
Bill 398.
Bill 398, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Shelley Denko Day for a single payment in 2024 in an amount not to exceed $61,607.12. This is the one that's scheduled for this afternoon.
What is it? Could you say again what it was?
So this is because of our alternative meeting schedule last week. Our regularly scheduled executive sessions had to be moved around or canceled for last week. So some of them that should have happened last week are actually scheduled for this afternoon. So it's the will of the body whether we hold until next week, until we've had the executive session, or whether we move today. But I know that many people like to wait to make an initial motion until we've had the executive session, so. We have a motion to hold 1 week.
Wish to? Are we able to pass it today?
Yes.
Okay.
Then we could recommit next week after the executive session. Motion to approve?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving Bill 398, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation, Bill 399.
Bill 399, resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Stephen Whitlock and his attorneys, Lieber, Hammer, Huber, and Paul, P.C., for a single payment in 2024 in an amount not to exceed $90,000 in full and final settlement of litigation filed in the United States District Court for the Western District of Pennsylvania.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 399, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation, Bill 400.
Bill 400, resolution providing for the creation of the Equitable Development Trust Fund and setting conditions for the deposit and expenditures of such funds. This fund is to be used to address community goals, including but not limited to workforce development and community reinvestment.
Motion to approve. Discussion.
Second.
Second with discussion, Councilman Wilson.
You can come to the table. Director. and- It's been a while.
Yeah. Morning, members. Andrew Dash, Deputy Director, Department of City Planning. The Equitable Development Fund is we're looking to create the Equitable Development Fund. This came out of the city's Oakland plan, where there were goals around the need to be able to, through workforce and other means, be able to connect residents to jobs that were being created in Oakland. The way that we've done that is through the creation of the Urban Center Employment District. That was one of the zoning districts that was passed by City Council about 1.5 years ago now. It did create as a part of bonuses that developers can receive in that district, which is essentially the Fifth and Forbes, area in Oakland. They can do one of three things to provide, kind of equitable development. One is through a local hiring program. One is through a connection for workforce training, and actually by providing a workforce training center within a building. And the third is contributions to an equitable development fund. The legislation is before you is to create that fund that is already in the city's zoning code as a part of, those bonuses. We have, after the plan's completion, worked with the Pittsburgh Hispanic Development Corporation, Partner for Work, the conference, Allegheny Conference, Allegheny County Economic Development, and the URA to work through, some draft guidelines for that fund. Once there are contributions to that fund, if we were looking to spend out of that fund, that would, have to go through normal spending channels, including us coming back to you with, with what a program for spending those funds would look like, when that. So the legislation before you is just to create that fund. Like I said, I know that, for the council members that are within the district in which this exists, we've forwarded a draft of guidelines, that have been created with those partners that I had noted. But those are, still subject to be finalized, and spending, like I said, would be approved ultimately by council.
So help me break this down. So you described all workforce and jobs. That was most of the language you were using in terms of the options. And so help me understand, like a developer can go, like what do they get in return? Well, I'm sorry, there's requirements within the zoning that they do workforce stuff?
So this is a part of a performance point, so a bonus. So they can get additional height to construct a building in the Urban Center Employment District, which presently only exists in the 5th and Forbes corridor in Oakland. But I think
They can get more height if they do what, workforce?
There's
or hire local people?
There's one of three things. One is that there's a certain percentage of what are termed as underrepresented groups that are hired as a part of the development, not the construction. And so for the first, I believe it's 10 years of the building's existence, that there are a certain percentage of people that have to be hired by underrepresented groups to receive that bonus. The second, that's one of the three options that they can use. The second of those three options is to actually build a workforce development center as a part of their building. And then the third is contributing to, the third possibility would be
is the
contributing
money.
to this fund.
So how much money? Like what's it equal to? A floor, 2 floors?
It depends on the level of bonus that they're looking to receive. The amount is anywhere from $3 to $5 per rentable square foot. As a part of the development.
$3 to $5 of rentable space.
Yes, and so and the other reason that
how high can they go?
Well, it allows them either anywhere from 1 to 3 points, so that is 15 to 45 feet in additional height, by doing one of the means through equitable development, including contribution
almost
to the fund.
50 feet above what's currently allowed.
The other reason to make sure that we create the fund is that if they choose to go the local hiring route, for example, and they do that, we have to get reporting from them, make sure that they're in compliance. If they're not in compliance with the local hiring, we would require them to contribute to the fund if they weren't meeting the local hiring goals, because obviously, we are predicating their local hiring down the road on what we're giving them a certificate of occupancy for.
Who's going to monitor
in
this?
The present. The Department of City Planning through our, through our staffing. Same as we monitor, for example.
What would be the enforcement mechanism? They didn't comply.
Well, the enforcement mechanism is if they are not complying with local hiring, that it would require contribution to the fund in the means that
they don't pay. We take them to the magistrate. What happens?
It goes through enforcement. So, it would be us, in a worst case, revoking a certificate of occupancy. Obviously.
You can revoke a certificate of occupancy if they're out of compliance with the workforce component or payment.
In a worst case scenario, since they would be receiving additional height for that, for the building, due to them complying with that the same way as they would comply with any other zoning standards? Yes. Obviously, obviously that is a worst case scenario, and that's why.
Interesting. I just always think of the certificate of occupancy as a safety. Obviously there's safety measures involved with it, but that's usually I'm typically hearing why someone doesn't have their occupancy permit because they don't have the right firewalls in between, or they don't have a sprinkler system. Right. They don't, Okay, well, that's interesting. And then moving forward, if what else could this fund be used for? Could other money come into this fund if there's another zone that's created? Like, what are the requirements to get money into this fund?
Yeah, so as it stands now, the fund really exists for for that portion of the zoning, so that equitable development performance point in the zoning code. There is the option down the road if there were going to be other contributions to the fund for it to be able to take those. Again, spending out of that would be something that ultimately would have to go, that we'd be bringing back to City Council. If we were looking to spend out of the fund.
But I'm just saying on the north side, let's say if we had a zone where we're allowing, if they wanted to go, if the builder wants to go up, 50 feet, higher, and we're going to do the same calculation based on the square footage, this fund would also be one. We would have to create a new one. This could be one that would
No, this would be one that would be for citywide. So, I mean, you know,
Yeah,
so
I'm just saying, although
although the zoning district that this applies to really presently only exists in Oakland, as it would expand, if it would expand into other areas of the city, you know, it would be the same. It would be utilizing the same fund. Part of the guidelines, the draft guidelines that are created at this point, do get to trying to make sure that money is spent in the area in which it's created, understanding that although today this is just in Oakland, it could be potentially expanded into other areas of the city. And we would want to make sure that, you know, if those dollars are generated in one place, that we're working on trying to bring, you know, local residents into those jobs that are, you know, that are in those communities.
All right, thanks. And who are you?
Christian Umbach, Senior Planner in Strategic Planning Division, also the Neighborhood Planner for Oakland. So working with the Oakland
for
plan.
Oakland.
Yeah. So,
Gotcha.
good to be
Who
with
came
you
out with
all.
the $3 to $5 a square foot?
So that was through the development of the zoning. We actually did meet with a number of developers in kind of the lead up to the creation of the, the fund option and those dollar contributions. I think initially that dollar amount was higher based on economic development work from the consultants that we had as a part of the Oakland plan. But in conversations with, with developers, as we led up through the zoning process, and I believe in conversations with city council, that was, I think, lowered, if I recall correctly, between the planning commission and city council process.
Okay.
For when the zoning was introduced.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. So we have Councilman Coghill next, followed by Councilwoman Cale Smith, followed by Councilperson Warwick. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, Andrew, so this trust fund, the money is going into a trust fund that already exists. Is that what you're saying?
No, we're actually asking
Creating
city
a new
council
trust
to
fund.
allow us to create the trust fund.
Okay, and the money from that goes into that trust fund will benefit whom?
The intention is that the benefit of the fund is to promote workforce development and connection to workforce to the jobs that are being created in this employment district. If we're thinking about new jobs coming around in kind of expansion of, in the creation of larger buildings in the 5th and Forbes corridor, which, I would say are not exclusively, but there's a lot of research and development, there's a lot of tech, a lot of lab space, a lot of, things related to both the universities and to healthcare, that we're creating, that this fund is helping to create pipelines for work for local residents, for underserved residents, to be a part of that growth in Oakland.
So if we had this fund in place previously, what would have it generated, say, last year?
Christian, I know we did a little bit of an analysis on the potential for generation for this fund. Can you speak to that?
Sure, yeah. So we did some estimates based on developments that would go through this process and contribute. There is the unknown of how much development will come in, so we can't predict that. But I do believe the numbers were in about 6 figures each year.
6 figures each year?
Yeah.
And that will be used citywide for workforce development and things of that nature, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not like it's basically a fee to build higher, but don't we have restrictions? What if the neighborhood doesn't want to build higher? It has to pass everything before we even consider that, is that right?
Well, it would be a part of the review process. So these developments would go through the planning commission, as for example, and it would be through that public process. There would obviously be noted that they would be going for this this performance point to achieve additional bonuses.
So give me an idea as to, like, last year. Let's just use Christian. How many buildings went above what they were initially granted to do, where we would have collected this fund?
Well, for these zoning districts, since they're newly applied in the last year, we haven't had a new development take advantage with the performance height. So it's unique. Traditionally, we would have a max height and you'd have to do variance to get above. But with the performance point, we have a max height and then an ultimate max height where you can get those additional bonuses. So it's a little bit different of a system. Right now with variances, we don't get any community benefit from that. They go to the board, but with this, for those increments and heights, we get a community benefit. So in our estimate, we looked at 2 previous commercial developments, and that's how we got our estimates, but it's kind of unknown until we see what the market produces.
Got it. You're not concerned that this fund will encourage the city of Pittsburgh to encourage developers to go higher?
Well, I think I think in the 5th and Forbes corridor, the intention is that we set a maximum height. We set height without bonuses. We do want to encourage people to go higher in the 5th and Forbes corridor. That was a part of the discussion in the Oakland plan. I think the thing that we want to make sure is that we're getting tangible community benefits in return. And so that's where the performance point system comes into place. And so in this case, that benefit is really around the potential for workforce development and for greater opportunities for local hiring in these new buildings and these new uses that are coming to the city.
We're expecting over 6 figures generated from this trust fund.
That is that's the intention. Yes.
When you say workforce development, give me an example. What's that mean?
So, the thing is that we have a lot of we have a lot of nonprofit partners that are already doing this work. And that's why we brought the folks like the Hispanic Development Corporation and Partner for Work, together, as people that are, providing some of those programs.
So,
as
like
well.
PHDC, which is in my district, they would benefit from this.
They could, in that
Because
there are
one of
organizations
many-
like that do work city. Although they're located in Beachview, they do work citywide, and so they are connecting, transplants to Pittsburgh, new immigrants.
So that's
to
where the
positions.
proceeds would go towards. When you say workforce development, people like PHDC who are out there, teaching, doing the works that they do. Is that right?
Yeah, the potential is there. There was also, in a part of the discussion, a certain amount of the fund that that I think that we were trying to see if there's a way to actually give to individuals. Whether that that there's a small portion of that can go to individuals to be providing them either additional training that they may need, or additional materials, or or things that they may need to purchase. To be able to kind of get into some of these lines of workforce.
I guess my issue is it's kind of vague as to what we're going to use the proceeds for. I understand PHDC and what they do, but when you say individuals, what do you mean by individuals you're trying to work it in? What do you mean by that?
In addition to workforce, entrepreneurship is also a topic of focus. So it could be to support new business owners getting started.
An amount of what?
That would be part of the guidelines we would set up.
Shouldn't these guidelines, I guess what I'm asking is, shouldn't these be set before we vote on it or before we discuss it, or?
Well, again, we have those in a draft form at this point. At the same time, we would be coming back to City Council before we would be spending anything out of the trust fund.
So we're asking to open the trust fund and
to be
start
able to receive
putting money into it, but without any clear direction as to who and what benefit, other than workforce development, which is, again, kind of broad. And Christian, when you say individuals, if I'm starting a business, that I can apply through this trust fund for financial aid, is that right?
There's a potential for support in general.
Okay, I don't know what to think of it, to be honest with you. I'll let other members ask questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cale Smith.
Thank you. I don't even know where to begin. I just can say that, first of all, I would do anything to help Oakland as much as I can. I was born and raised, I think I'm the only person born and raised on Fifth Avenue right in Oakland. And so I still have a lot of family over that area. I would love to see great things happen there. But I do not think opening a trust fund, another way to open another account. Can we have the budget director come to the table, please? Opening another account that has money that goes around city council. You're saying it's going to come before us. There's a lot of things that are supposed to come before us. We pass them anyway, and a lot of times without any questions. And I think that one of the things that concerns me is that this is another way to fund more organizations. We're saying, Director, I want to know how many dollars are going out to nonprofit organizations in the city of Pittsburgh. And I want to know, well, I actually have quite a few questions. How many dollars in general are going around city council and through the URA, city planning, trust funds? We have, I believe 87 trust funds, and I know we cut back some of them. And I think it down to 87 or 86 is what we got it. Do you recall?
That sounds right. It was, I believe that's what it's down to, because we cut like maybe a dozen of them,
Right.
but it was close to 100
So
before.
I feel like city council does not do our job of watching the dollars. That is our job, to watch dollars and to write legislation. I think we do a lot of things that are out of our purview and maybe not necessarily something we should be doing, but definitely watching the dollars, the public dollars, is something we should do. But when you talk about jobs being created, you're talking about UPMC? We're going to help get UPMC employees? Is that what we're trying to do?
Well, I mean, it
Or
would be.
Whom are you talking about?
It would be anything that would be developed in the urban center employment district. I mean, if we think about what's recently been developed in there, there's been, multiple lab buildings, that have been research and development, that have, kind of been spun off of programs at the universities. There is obviously the opportunity for life sciences, which includes UPMC as well. So, I mean, again, the idea is that, the fund, like when those buildings are being built, because they'd be getting additional height, that would be when they'd contribute to the fund as one of the three ways to be able to meet that point. And if there was money in the fund, then it would be spent to go to, and just trying to read from the draft guidelines, youth training of individuals at different life stages to be, applicants for jobs, provision and quality of jobs, and business support and entrepreneurial services for disadvantaged groups. That was, that was the, what was specifically mentioned, as, potential expenditures.
You know
from
who's
the fund.
disadvantaged? The city of Pittsburgh residents, when they're expecting us to watch their tax dollars and we're giving them out to other people to divvy out however they see fit, without any oversight from city council, not real oversight. We're supposed to also be watching the Stop the Violence funds and some other things, and we've even legislated reports to come back to us. They changed the report back to what they initially wanted, so we don't have those reports coming back to us. The other thing is you also oversee the Stormwater Trust Fund from 2016. Do you have any updates on that?
I believe we had something come before City Council just last week or 2 weeks ago
How
around
often
lawn
do
and Ophelia, and
Yeah.
so that was an expenditure from the Stormwater Trust Fund.
And how often do you use that trust fund?
I mean, I don't have specifics,
I'll be honest with you, I'm
usage of the
concerned
trust
because
fund, but-
I've looked at the trust funds, and the director knows, I've been trying to look at the trust funds and try to minimize them as much as I can. And, I think maybe the mistake I made was just saying, just go ahead and do it, where I probably should have worked with council members and said, let's, eliminate some of these trust funds ourselves, because that's what we need to be doing. And we need to be watching these dollars, and I'm not gonna sit here making excuses or feeling sorry, but I do get upset that I also want to know how much, I think I mentioned, I want to know that the dollar amount that we're giving to allocating to nonprofit organizations. I want to know the total dollar amount that we're allocating to funds outside of city council's purview, any trust funds, URA, city planning, anything we're doing. I want to know what is going outside of city council's purview. And maybe we'll put some things in place that we can watch those dollars too, because I think it's getting a little bit, I think it was out of control when I was council president. I told you this before, but I had Rhea Price was able to really look through some of these and work through some of this for us. But at this point, I feel like, I'm sorry, there used to be an attorney sitting here, a solicitor, to give us advice on, what happened to the solicitor?
I don't know.
Is there a reason they're not here? I'm curious.
Would you like me to answer that?
Yeah,
in this
I'm just
moment?
curious.
Yeah. So, so that our attorneys in our law department, our hardworking attorneys in our law department, can do other work and get their work done, we have made the decision to give them the opportunity to view and be present by watching online. And if they are needed, if you'd like them to call them right now, we can call them right now and get them down here. But there's always a person assigned at the ready
So that's the way it used to be, and I'll tell you the reason why I want them here is because when we had that pay debacle, when everybody was saying that what they weren't, everybody all of a sudden they weren't the parliamentarian. Nobody took responsibility. So it came to the clerk or to the council or the chairperson or the council president. And sometimes it helps to have somebody here who is the parliamentarian, so they can weigh in without us having to ask.
Councilwoman, would you like me to call a member of the law department to be sitting
No, I would
here
like to know
right
that
now?
the law department's going to be here, is what I'd like to know. So
Understood.
anyway, for me, that's all I want to say is that I'm just not going to vote for this. I'm not going to vote for any more dollars to be, but I do want all that information, and I want it to be public, so the public knows what we're giving up and what we're doing. Thank you.
We did try to make a greater effort this past year, but you're right, there are so many trust funds that it's just a lot to go through
It is a lot.
in the short period of time whenever we're going through the televised budget hearings. But we'll certainly step up our efforts and especially work with the controller's office, because they do audits of those trust funds on a regular basis to go through them. So.
And you do know that I am receiving a lot of phone calls about some of this stuff. And
Absolutely, yeah.
So I've given you all that stuff so you know,
Yeah.
and our solicitor, so he knows, what I'm receiving from people. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Warwick.
I'll probably go second time.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so just so I'm clear, the idea is that
Talk again.
if you were to get a variance for additional height, you could essentially buy a variance or buy additional height on your building by contributing to this trust fund or creating a workforce hub or whatever in the building. But the more realistic seems that you would just buy your variance. Is that correct?
The performance points are options to receive additional height, so it wouldn't be a variance necessarily, because what we've done is we've created what's called a base height in each of the districts that use the performance points. Although this performance point is in the Urban Center Employment District, the performance point system also exists along our riverfronts. It exists in Uptown as well. And so in those neighborhoods, there are a number of performance points that people can use to get additional height. In this case, we're talking about equitable development. People could, the creation of this fund is one of the means to, contributing to the fund is one of the means to do that. But there's also stormwater, going above and beyond on stormwater, or, for districts that have residential uses, which the UCE is much more limited in that way. Providing affordable housing is something, is a performance point that people can receive additional height for in a district. If that answers your question.
Oh, okay. So there are other rules. So explain this, please. There are other rules in the zoning code that allow you to get more height for doing other things, whether that's creating more stormwater, whether it's creating affordability.
That's correct.
And so this would just be another one of those, except what you're doing is most likely contributing to this workforce development fund.
That's correct.
Okay. And this exists in Oakland today.
It does. It exists in the zoning code today in the Urban Center Employment District, which is presently mapped in the 5th and Forbes corridor in Oakland.
Okay, but nobody has actually taken advantage of it.
No, it's been in place. The zoning was passed, I think, roughly a year and a half ago. And so we haven't had anyone utilize it yet. But obviously we want to be able to set up the fund for the possibility of that taking place.
Okay, I gotta say, this seems very, so I'm all for workforce development, but it seems sort of a complicated way. I mean, and I would love to see developers do more, right, but this seems like a complicated sort of, in general, right, we're trying to simplify our zoning code, make it easier to build things. This seems like this seems more complicated than it needs to be. I guess I also have concerns, sort of along the lines of Councilman Coghill's questions of like what, it seems very vague. I mean, what is, there is lots of, I mean, I've said this a number of times, there's lots of talk about workforce development in the city of Pittsburgh from lots of different groups, but I'm not, I would love to ask you, how many jobs in Oakland have gone to PPS students without a college degree as a result of this fund? But we don't have an answer for that because it's not something that anyone has used yet. I'm not sure if it seems like maybe, well, I feel like maybe before we expanded it. So, can you talk about some of the other funds? That are not the other funds. Can you talk about some of the other, sort of similar perks, I guess, to say, like you could get to, if you build bigger, build higher, if you do X. Can you talk about some success stories with those?
Sure. So, I would say that, we have performance points, across a number of different districts that do different things or relate to community goals that have come through previous plans. And so, we have, I can't quantify it, on the spot right now, but, we have a number of developments that have done increased stormwater beyond, what the code requires in exchange for bonus for the performance points. We have had developments that have utilized the public art performance point. I can think of some examples on the North Shore, for example, in exchange for additional height. We have some that have used, both energy from either generating energy or, energy reduction in buildings, to do that. We can definitely provide, places where the performance points have been used, if that would be helpful.
Okay, and so, all right, so putting that aside, so let's say, because I do, in theory, I do like this idea of like, as the city, we're getting something back. Like, we're giving the developer something, right? They get to build bigger, build higher, whatever, sell more apartments, whatever, and then they give something back to the city in exchange. So that concept I understand. In terms of the fund itself, so it would be nice to understand, along the lines of what Councilwoman Smith was saying, what is the workforce, like, where will the fund go? What are the measurements that we need to see for someone, someone who has got, for an organization, for example, that has gotten money out of the fund? Like this question, how many jobs have gone to PPS students without a college degree? I think that should be the first question to any workforce development, any organization, anyone around workforce development. How many jobs have you given, how many PBS students without college degrees are now working as a result of the program? And you said you have that like sketched out, or?
We have general guidelines for criteria for the fund. Anytime that we would make an expenditure, anytime that we would try to spend money from the fund, it would have to be something that would be approved by City Council. We'd have to come back to you all, for that, whether that was an agreement with an organization or whether that was, payment for specific actions, out of the fund. So that we'd have to come back to you all, similar to, to other trust funds that the Department of City Planning has, that are in these things where developers are contributing funds in lieu of something else. Those expenditures, when they're made, have to go through City Council, and we would have to, come to you for a resolution to spend those funds.
Okay, and then just one last question. I'll hand it over. Hypothetically, could a developer take advantage of, say, all three? So say, could they do get extra height for stormwater and for, workforce development and for affordable housing, and then go even higher, even bigger?
Yes, they can, but there's a maximum height in each of these districts. So they're only allowed to go so high, in any of the districts that we have in the city. So even with the performance points, so there's a limit. There's an upper limitation. So yes,
I thought that it was like you could get a variance to go beyond. I thought that was what this was. Sorry if I'm not understanding it.
No. So the way that it works is that we have what's called a base height, and the base height, it does vary by district, but that is the maximum that someone can build without any bonuses. Then we have a maximum height, which is the maximum height that they can build after bonuses through the performance points program. So there is an upper limit to the amount of bonuses that a developer could try for, to be able to achieve height. It would not be unlimited, I guess, if that's your question.
Oh God, this all just seems really complicated. I mean, I feel like, wouldn't it be easier to just be like, this is the height that you can build to, and any development you do, you have to pay X amount to the city of Pittsburgh, in taxes? I mean, it seems, I don't know, maybe that's something for us to think about. This just seems like a very complicated way and sort of pigeonholing monies for things that, I don't know, I guess, things like stormwater, right? Like, we should put the requirements where they should be, right? Like, where they're the most effective, I don't know. It just seems like a weird way to use the zoning code to sort of do sort of human interest work.
And maybe,
okay, I'll stop now. I'm just kind of thinking out loud, I guess.
And maybe to provide a clarification, with all of these performance points, those are not contributions in most cases, and even in the Equitable Development Fund, 2 of the 3 options are not them contributing to the fund. The idea is that in most of these cases that we want people to, I think, to your statement, Councilperson Warwick, provide those benefits. So people are providing additional stormwater above and beyond the code, for example, relative to that, or they are providing, public art or other items if they're utilizing those performance points. And even in the Equitable Development Fund or the Equitable Development Performance Points, 2 of the options are for them to provide a workforce development center, or to do local hiring, which would not be them contributing to the fund. This is really a backstop if they try to do one of those 2 and they don't achieve it, or secondarily, it is a third option.
Yeah, I hear you. It just seems very complicated. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but it's like I'm building a building, and I don't know and then eventually someone will rent the space, and who are they going to hire? It just seems like lots of sort of different. At any rate, okay. Well, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross, you are next, followed by Councilman Charland. If you'll indulge me, I would like to, and then followed by Council President, I would like to just, before we go any further down this path, give a little bit of context to how we got to this point from one of the 3 Oakland representatives on council. And first I'll just say, I agree, it's complicated. And I think that all the developers and members of, who are part of this task force in Oakland, who helped to contribute to this plan over a course of 2.5 years, would agree. And I think it's because we had so much public participation in a very, very complicated neighborhood, which is really 5 neighborhoods in one, that has residents, it has big institutions, that has employment centers. And to get all those people in a room working on various aspects of the Oakland plan in various neighborhoods results in somewhat complicated answers if we're going to try to make as many people satisfied as possible. So what this does is it takes Fifth and Forbes, which are transit corridors, which are workforce corridors, which are not what we all decided collectively in Oakland was that we didn't necessarily want it to be luxury student housing centers, right? Which is what we've been seeing over the past couple of years without any intervention. It's been like where luxury student housing has been built. We want it to be workforce centers. We want it to be the driver of innovation in Oakland. And how do we do that? We want to use zoning to encourage that to happen. And how do you do that? Well, you say, this is going to be a new UCE district, and you establish a new district, and then if we want to encourage density, if we want to encourage height, if we want to encourage, what we want to see there, again, agreed upon, even by the people who don't want to see a lot of height in South Oakland, they still even said on Fifth and Forbes, do what, essentially do what you want, because this is where it should be. So it was collectively agreed upon. Not everyone wants to see really, really, really tall skyscrapers in Oakland. But as was said already, if there is a mechanism already to have a base height and then request a variance, and to, in some cases, get the variance, in some cases not get the variance, what the community said, very clearly was, we want some benefit for that variance. We want to get something in Oakland for that variance, or the equivalent of a variance. And what was already established in code through the RIV process, through the RIV zoning process, was performance points. Now, is it complicated? Is it like, if you do X, you get Y, you do this one thing, you get, yes, it's complicated, but it's one of the tools that we have. And I'm certainly open. I think we would all be open to continue to look at this tool and assess it. And, certainly as the first expenditure comes forward to council, we will also grill you on that, and at whether it's working or not. I know that there are look back points within the Oakland plan. We're going to be continuing to look at Oakland, the Oakland plan. Is it working? What do we have to tinker with? How can this be a model for future zoning? But to get nothing out of that additional height was unacceptable to the residents and other partners in Oakland. And so if what results is, if it's kind of like the stormwater or the tree planting, like if they can't do it on site, they have then the option to pay into a fund, and maybe South Oakland gets a rec center development, or funding out of this, or maybe so a rec center is not a good idea because this is equitable development, but maybe, we get equitable development projects in parts of Oakland that have been, ignored for the past couple of years. So, I guess I just wanted to the main point I wanted to make is that this was community driven, and it's complicated because it was community driven, and there were people who, really had strong opinions about what Oakland was or was not getting out of development on Fifth and Forbes. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you for your indulgence, Councilwoman Gross. I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, some of us lived through the 2 years of various different Oakland rezoning things, but it didn't have to live through the 4 years of in-person meetings or something. But it wasn't a 4-year process, I think, with the planning department. But back to the actual trust fund that's proposed in front of us. So this is a resolution that would allow for the capture of the funds that are already existing in the zoning amendment that when we voted on the second batch of Oakland rezoning that changed the performance table. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay. So what we don't have, and we keep referring to, and citizens can look up, is the performance table, which is not in the finance chapter of code, but is in the zoning code, I guess, right?
That's correct.
So if you look up in like Muni Code is the website that comes up with our ordinances, and you look at the performance table, which I'm not doing, it's not in front of us. I guess you referenced several times, people at the table have referenced that sometimes you can do basically a payment in lieu for your performance point. Instead of trading something like, I will provide bicycle parking, and so I don't have, this is maybe not in the performance table, I can't remember where it is, and so I can not do 10% or 20% of the car parking that would otherwise be required. So that would be like a kind of, you're trading one thing for another, like a thing for a thing. And you mentioned in several parts that this is trading these payments in lieu of some requirement for a height limit or something like that. So you mentioned the stormwater one, which I'm recalling, and I was recalling it when I read this because the legislation is very, very similar in language, almost identical in language. And similarly, curt, I would say, right? Not a lot of details. And are there any others in the performance table? People have mentioned affordability, but to my knowledge, there's no place in the performance table where you would trade money for your affordability bonus or something like that.
So I'll try to answer those questions. In the performance points with affordability, the requirement is for them to provide affordable units.
Right.
In exchange
for
for
like
height.
the
There's
height
not
or
a
something.
fund. There's not contribution
no
to
fund.
a fund around affordable housing. It is only providing affordable units. In the zoning code writ large, there are two. This would be the third trust fund that we are asking. That we're asking to create. The other one, there is a stormwater trust fund, which is around if people cannot provide the stormwater facilities that they're required to provide on site, which many times cannot happen because of the soils underneath, because of previous development, because of a number of reasons, they can contribute to the stormwater trust fund. The other one that we have is there are open space requirements in places like downtown, where if for some reason, they cannot provide the open space that is required, they contribute to the open space trust fund. Those two are related to requirements otherwise in the zoning code. They're not in the performance points. But so those are the three trust funds that we have, that have been created relative to places in the zoning or development codes that we have, where a developer could contribute to a fund that would be separate from, or that would be like their way of meeting the requirement. In all three of those options, both the two that exist today and in this one, expenditures from that fund, have to be approved by City Council. We had legislation that came to you all for creation of those two trust funds, and then when we've had expenditures from those trust funds, we went for a co-op agreement with PWSA. At one point in time, we very recently contributed to PWSA for the Lawn and Ophelia project, which was a joint project between the city and PWSA. Those expenditures come through City Council and require City Council approval.
Okay, so thank you, right? And so this is as you said, the third one, it's proposed and it's based on requirements that are in the performance table. The other two are based on requirements that are elsewhere in the zoning code.
Yes.
But I think, I just want to kind of remind not just council members, but the public that there's a wide gamut of trust funds. And I think it's important that we have these conversations every time we consider creating one. So forgive me, many members have heard me say this, for several years on end when we've debated other trust funds. There was a full year of debate when we created the language, just the language setting up the Housing Opportunity Fund, which some of us had to live through, right? And it was important because I think we did a pretty good job on it, but it was much, much longer than just 3 sentences, right? It was, a very robust set of requirements. But they're not apples to apples, right? I always say, I have no problem at all with the Mellon Park Tennis Bubble Trust Fund. And I always say that's a real thing. It truly exists. And it's structured like this, right? The revenue is collected because when people use the tennis bubble, and then it's okay. I think it's the Parks Department who can decide where the expenditures are. And, there's a rip in the tennis bubble. They've got this little pot of money where they don't have to go through too many hoops, right? It's definitely, listed here on our legislative packet. So if members of the public can see it, and if they do object or have an opinion strong in favor or opposed, they could technically show up. But generally they don't, because we're just patching a hole in the tennis bubble or doing whatever the tennis bubble maintenance needs. And that's great. And I think I have no qualms, no quarrel with it at all. But then on the other hand, even though the language here is similarly kind of, again, short and vague, that's not what this is. This is possibly something that we need greater transparency on than the Mellon Park Tennis Bubble Trust Fund, right? Because you're talking about funds that are basically, you have to write a check to the city treasurer, right? So the check goes technically into the general fund, and I'm looking at our finance or budget director who's going to confirm this after I'm done. So you're going to go to the monies are literally going to go to the general fund. but then they're going to go to this trust fund if we vote on it today. But then the kind of gatekeepers of the planning department. But you're talking about giving it maybe to intermediaries, right? So I think you listed several. The Hispanic Development Center, what's the workforce one called? Partners for Work, which is a county agency, a kind of state agency for each county or something like that. I can't remember. We've contracted them to do other kinds of work. And then possibly they're like re-granting or allocating possibly even to individuals, to benefits. This is, you see how many arm's length moves I have to make for these funds. And so I think to Councilman Smith's earlier point is that we don't want to be derelict in our responsibilities at this table, which is to make sure that the public knows where the heck money is going. That's literally that's why we meet 49 weeks a year, and there's so many little invoice numbers, even down to like a couple $100 on this agenda, is that so the public can see it. Even if they don't see it today, they can look back at last year's and they can see it. And there's too many arm's lengths for something that really people, I think, should be paying attention to and should care about. Like, so after you go through form arm lengths removals from this table, is the person who needs that workforce support and possibly receives it from the city general fund that's gone to the trust fund that's, gone through the planning department to a possible conduit, do they live in the city? How are we going to know if these are city residents? I mean, 100% of these funds, could they go to people who live in Moon Township? And the employers that are benefiting from these trust funds are, they based in New York? I mean, I don't know who these research firms are that maybe are in these buildings. So, and sometimes we don't know, right? But when it comes to the table and the people can see it, very often, trust me, the public lets us know stuff because we're not omniscient. We don't know everything, and we're certainly. That's why there's not just like one council person. There's 9 of us. We put our heads together, and we have our citizens who can see these things and to help us if there's something wrong, right? So I'm not comfortable with just how loosely this is written, given the goals, which are, again, I appreciate our interim planning director or nominee that we interviewed yesterday, Dr. Bay, always saying, well, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? In his 2-hour interview yesterday, what is the problem we're trying to solve? I think we all kind of identify and agree that there's this problem. But then to look at this tool as the solution to it, there's just a lot of wiggle room. And I wonder if the outcomes are really what will satisfy what the intent is. So I don't think I'm in favor today.
I would just.
I was going to defer to our budget director because I said I was going to ask you about that. Did I get that right with the kind of decision points?
No, that sounds right. I mean, it does all go through the regular budget process, but like I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of trust funds, as Councilwoman Cale Smith said.
But
So
to the conduits.
yeah.
Right, and so once we've written that check to Partners for Work, we don't know what their board's approving or their executive director's writing the checks for.
Ideally-
That doesn't come back to the table.
Yeah, ideally there would be some kind of contract in place that council would see what they're voting on if they approved money going out the door. That's not always the case.
We don't know who they're giving it
Yeah.
to. And so that use of conduits, which is relatively the same with the URA, ARPA funds, I think that Councilwoman Smith was asking for. I can see how these, not all trust fund expenditures, I don't have a problem with trust funds writ large. But again, because they're not all substantively the same. And so, but when we're giving like lump sums of money, like here's $35 million, which wouldn't be this, I don't assume, but ARPA funds, et cetera, we've been feeling like we can't keep track of then where the money is going to in enough real time. So I feel like that's my discomfort here, on top of the fact that when we do have so many, it does make it harder to keep track of them all. and that they are able to then kind of re-grant money, basically, we definitely don't have eyes on that. So, is there anything you want to add?
To just add to your point, we do have a lot of trust funds, and a lot of them, you used a great example, the Mellon Park Trust Fund. It's very straightforward of what we're collecting money for and what we're spending that money on. Another one that comes to mind is the Liquid Fuels Trust Fund, that it's money we get from the Commonwealth that we legally have to spend in a certain way. So that's why it makes sense to have it in a trust fund, so it's set up that we can keep track of it to make sure we're spending it in that exact way. So now it's a question to council, are you comfortable setting up this trust fund to make sure that these expenditures are spent in a way that you approve of?
Right, and again, so for the members of the public, this is 2024-0400, and it's really 3 sentences. And so even, the funds shall be spent to address community goals. Community goals. Not limited to workforce development, and not limited to community reinvestment. That's very, very, very legally broad. So, who's the community? What are the goals? And that the funds shall be administered by the Department of City Planning. So, I feel like this could be better. No, I'll stop there, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Charlin.
All right. So very quickly here, I hear from members a lot about relitigating the Oakland plan, and for at least 3 of the members here in our staffs, I know none of us want to relitigate it from the start here again. I know what we're discussing today is the trust fund. So my question, Director Dash, is if we do not create this trust fund, is this just taking away one of the options that developers can maximize their height? If we choose not to build this trust fund, going against what the Oakland plan said, are we now saying that you can't take advantage of the trust fund? Now you have to follow the other options to get your maximum height?
It would be pretty difficult for us to administer that piece of the ordinance if we didn't have a place to put that money. I think the other thing is it is also the backstop for the local hire. If people aren't achieving local hiring, which is one of the options that they can do without contributing to a trust fund to meet that point, but it would be hard for us to enforce that because we wouldn't have the ability to tell them that they have to pay in the Equitable Development Trust Fund if they're not meeting the local hiring for that performance point.
So you're saying that
we would not be able to do either of those things, I think.
So you're saying that if someone is not, that our plan would be if you are not doing the local hiring practices, you would have to contribute to the trust fund. That would be our stick, in this scenario. Someone can choose to give to the trust fund. If you're a developer, you can choose to give to the trust fund, or you could do workforce development. But if you do not do workforce development, we're going to come after you and say you have to contribute to the trust fund. Is that right? Am I correct to understand that? Okay. And if we choose not to go along with the desires of the Oakland plan here, and by forming this trust fund, we won't be able to do really either of those strategies anymore because we don't have the carrot or the stick.
That's correct.
Okay. So that's really what we're discussing today, and I know that other members are mentioning how complicated the Oakland plan is. It is very complicated. For the members that are discovering how challenging the zoning portion of the Oakland plan is, the whole thing is complicated. There's not one part of it that's not complicated. But this is just one piece of that we need to create in order to make sure that we can fulfill the neighborhood plan and what the neighborhood has agreed upon and council has ratified and what is city code now. We're not relitigating the whole Oakland plan from the start here, right?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. That's those are my questions. I appreciate you being here and continuing to wrestle with this massive planning process. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Mosley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few questions, primarily about the expenditure process. But before we get to that, I did just have questions about because I wasn't. I guess maybe thankfully, based on how the Oakland plan has been described, I was not around when those discussions were happening. But it says in the summary of the legislation that to address community goals, we've talked a lot about workforce development, but it also mentions community reinvestment. Is there like other potential goals on that list that we haven't discussed? Because we spent a lot of time talking about workforce development and also entrepreneurial development. So is there other community goals that we may have not touched upon?
Those are really the primary community
Okay.
goals relative to this fund specifically, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And I was just curious about how the expenditure, process would work, about how potentially workforce development, training providers, as well as, entrepreneurial, business organizations potentially would actually apply, to the fund, and then who would be the decision-making body to determine, who gets the funds once they apply.
Yeah, so as a part of the recommendation of the Oakland plan, there was discussion, and that discussion was put into the draft guidelines that we have to create a community reinvestment board, which would be essentially an advisory group that would, with city planning would be taking in applications when that took place. That board would review the applications with us to make recommendations to city council, because again those expenditures are ultimately ones that we as a department would have to bring to you as city council to approve. The idea is that that it would be we'd be receiving applications for specific programs or specific work that would be direct and identifiable as to what they are and what their benefit is before we would bring those to you.
And as part of that process, were specific kinds of workforce development training providers, as far as specific areas of workforce development, whether light manufacturing or clean energy or biomedical. Was there kind of specific kind of typologies of workforce development programs that were highlighted that would kind of be preferred in this corridor?
Not specifically in the guidelines. However, in the Oakland plan, there is a lot of discussion around just what what not only we're seeing, but what is kind of predicted to come, which is just further expansion of spin-off from either university programs or life sciences.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a realization through the planning process that there was a disconnect between those new jobs and the skills of residents in and around that area that are there today.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was structured as a way to try to create workforce development opportunities to be able to connect residents of the city and the surrounding neighborhoods to the opportunities that are taking place with these emerging industries.
Mm-hmm. And is it envisioned that some of these workforce development programs would be housed, within, I believe you called it the urban center district, or would it be, workforce development programs that could be physically located throughout the city, or both?
It would have to have some relationship to the place in which we're taking those funds are being, the neighborhood that those funds are coming from. And so
Right.
we have kind of, separate from all of this, we have kind of rational nexus in zoning, which means that requirements that we put into place have to have some sort of relation to, to their benefit. So, in this case with workforce, it would be the programs that we would fund, out of these contributions would be things that would connect back to those neighborhoods where the contributions are coming from. So, if the workforce, the workforce opportunities would have to be, in or around Oakland, if not the centers themselves.
Mm-hmm. And is it fair to assume that, from an entrepreneurial development standpoint, it would be kind of similar industries that have kind of been targeted for the workforce development? That would be the similar kind of, entrepreneurial development ventures that this could potentially support?
Very likely, yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I know we have at least one council member wants to speak second round. Before we do that, I'm observing a lot of questions and a lot of desire for greater detail here before we consider this bill further. It's the will of the body, but what I would recommend is that we hold it for at least a week, that we get a few more details that we know have been sketched out already to council members, hopefully bring a greater level of comfort as to the fact that we do have some details that have been shared with the Oakland council members to all council members, have you and Christian, Assistant Director Dash and Christian meet with the council members who have questions about this, and hopefully bring some greater level of comfort before the next week. That would be my recommendation, but I'll take the will of the body. But Council President Lavelle first round, and then second round will be Council President Cale Smith if you still wish to speak.
Thank you. Question for you. By greater detail, I'm assuming you mean the draft guidelines?
The draft guidelines.
Okay. If we want to hold it a week, and that's the will of the body, so be it. Yes, the Oakland plan is very complicated, but the idea is actually really simple. Both you and Councilman Charlin gave a great contextual overview of how we got here. I'll just add one other little piece to it, which is, as we were going through the planning process, not that it's not still somewhat divisive, but development in Oakland had been very divisive, and members, Oakland residents, Oakland community groups have been advocating to get CBAs done with each individual project. And part of what they were advocating for, as an example, was you're going to be building commercial storefront space. And we would like to have the opportunity for local businesses to be able to be within those spaces at lower rents than what Starbucks may come in at, right? We would like the opportunity to have, if you're going to be hiring 100 new people to staff up this new building, we would like to have the opportunity for those residents to be able to come from the neighborhood itself. And so early on, well, I won't say early on, but somewhere in the Oakland planning process, sort of housing rose to one of the top concerns, and access to jobs rose to the top concerns. We quickly realized that based upon what Uptown has in place, based upon what the riverfront, the RIV zoning has in place, we had a manner in which to attach affordable housing based upon performance points. We then decided collectively that the way to do jobs, which was a key concern of the Oakland community, was to also attach it to performance points. That way, the idea being that then, once it's in zoning, the Oakland residents don't have to fight over every single development. It's already baked in, right? And so this is now the first step of sort of realizing that idea. And the first being that train our residents, create the first source hiring centers, do all of that. And if for some reason that doesn't work, then pay into a fund so that we can take resources to do it. And the guidelines will, obviously, if you want the more detail, we'll go and explain this. But this is essentially step one, right? Create the thing. Then there's adopt the guidelines. Then there's between the city planning department, if I'm wrong, correct me. There's the planning department. There's going to be a community board that oversees this funding and that makes recommendations to this body, to city council, on how to expend those dollars. So we will absolutely have every say on where those dollars go. So while yes, and I don't want to have to revisit this plan, and there are a number of steps that are coming out of this plan, right? So you create the plan and now you got to actualize things. This is one of those actualizations. And so I don't view this as that complicated. But those are my comments. I can vote it now if it's the will of the body to wait for a week so they can also review the guidelines and feel more comfortable. That's fine too. But short of this, we don't then begin to realize the actual goals of the plan.
Thank you. That exhausts first round. I have first up for second round, Councilwoman Cale Smith, followed by Councilwoman Gross.
Yeah, I'm not gonna try to belabor this a little bit, but actually your comments usually calm me down, Council President, but this time, hearing that there will be community people that decide where the public dollars should go. They're not elected.
That's not what I said.
So tell me who's going to respond. Who's going to look at it?
I said, so, if you allow.
Interrogatory.
City planning and a community board will make recommendation to this body of where they would like to see those funds go. A similar example is the Housing Opportunity Fund has an advisory board. They make recommendations on how to expend those dollars. Ultimately, that plan is approved by this board here.
Right, and I will say this, that Housing Opportunity Fund board is, well, at least was, I don't know the current status, was filled with a lot of people benefiting from those dollars too. So a lot of times they had to abstain from things or recuse themselves because they were also benefiting from those dollars. So for me, I just want to make sure that it's not about helping Oakland or trying to do some of these things. It is for me that there's a lot of trust fund money, and there's a lot of funding currently that we're not using that are sitting in trust funds. We have departments that are struggling, trying to make ends meet with just a few dollars. We now have a big issue going on with our own budget, and there's questioning about some of the things that we're spending money on and the grant funding and all those other things that we're doing, which is a big bulk. We're expecting a department of DOMI to pave roads with just a couple $1 million next year. And and we're just turning over dollars and handing things out to people when our responsibilities are to make sure things are done in the city of Pittsburgh. This might be something great to work with somebody, a foundation or something else. I don't know. But for me, it's all the funding. It's all the way that we're spending. And I think that we need to buckle up a little bit and try to make sure that we're doing what we need to do, what we're elected to do, to make sure things are done for the residents. What we're elected to do is to make sure the roads are paved, to make sure the bridges are safe, to make sure that rec centers are open, to make sure that things are cleaned and trees are cut. I mean, we know what we're supposed to do, but yet we're doing all this other stuff, and the money's there. So, I'm going to hear us talking about raising taxes. I'm thinking our taxpayers can't afford any more money. A lot of them can't even make ends meet now. And so I just feel like we need to be wise about before we send any more dollars out of our purview, out of the city councils, and for anything that's not directly related to this, to our core functions. But I will say, I think that I'm curious who you're working with in Oakland that's currently developing in Oakland. The only ones I know are UPMC, and I know Bakery Square had their one project that they want to expand. What is their name? Walnut Capital. That they had something they want to expand. Are there any other developers that you're aware of currently?
Yeah, there are other developers that are either partially through a planning process or presently in legal proceedings, around the Fifth and Forbes corridor. Right. And there are beyond that still a number of opportunities in the Fifth and Forbes corridor for either properties that are available for new development or properties that are that have a lot of opportunity for redevelopment.
And I would love to see kids getting jobs, or young people getting jobs, or even anybody getting a job that needs a job in the city of Pittsburgh. I'd love to see people stay here. But I'm wondering why workforce development that we're already funding can't work on some of that. And maybe some of the trust funds that we have that are sitting around and doing nothing, maybe some of those funds could be moved towards workforce development to increase some of the jobs in the city of Pittsburgh. And I think that, I'm not going to say I'm against skyscrapers, and I'm for development. One of the best buildings in Oakland is a skyscraper, the Cathedral of Learning. So it's not that I'm opposed to those things. I just want to make sure that whatever we're doing in terms of the dollars is the responsible thing to do with public dollars. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
But thank you for saying you'll hold it for a week. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gross.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I think I just need, I support the hold. I'm happy to read the guidelines, but I do want to clarify just a couple things to close out the conversation. I'll start with the guidelines. The guidelines aren't, may exist, and planning may choose to follow them if we vote this trust fund, if we voted it with the language that is in front of us today. If they don't have to. So, that's an easy fix, right? That there be a set of guidelines and that we require that it be followed for the expenditure of the funds is basically probably not even a full sentence, but it doesn't exist here. And so it's just kind of optional. And again, this is just, because there's almost no words here on the paper, it's incredibly loose. And then, so that's one thing. And then secondly, and maybe we should approve the guidelines, for example, the way we approve them for the HOF. If this is the model here, and we support, if we think as a body that model is a good idea here, well, then we can make it more like that model instead of the very loose approximation that it is. So the second one is a technical point, and I feel like between our budget director and our assistant director of planning, I think I got your name right, I got it right, that you should be able to answer this. A moment ago, a councilman asked if we were unable to collect or unable to use that section of the performance table, which I still can't find on my phone. What is the section of code that the performance table is?
91507.
Thank you. Because this trust fund didn't exist. Does it say in the performance table that the money has to go to a trust fund that doesn't exist?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for asking that, because I've been trying to struggle with that. Because otherwise, in my kind of like description in my head earlier, I said the money, literally kind of all monies are collected into the general fund. And so we just didn't set it up that way.
Yeah, this was it seems like it was a little bit cart before the horse of.
So again, back to kind of Councilman Smith's concerns, and Councilman Sherlin's concerns, hypothetically, that would be a separate amendment, which would be a little bit more of a heavy lift. We could have that performance table option, but the money could just go into the general fund. If the body willed it, right? I mean, it's technically feasible. Oh, wait.
Oh,
Yes,
is that a
is
question
it
for
was
me?
a question.
Oh, yeah. If you wanted to amend the zoning code to say that the money will go into the general fund rather than into, as it says now, the city's equitable development trust fund. Yeah, you could.
There's no legal problem with that.
I'm not a lawyer, so
I think that, I mean, it would be something that I'm sure we'd have to consult with the law department around the rational nexus of the requirement that we have in zoning. If you were trying to say that instead of it going to the equitable development trust fund for the purposes of workforce development, which is why they're paying in, that it then went into the general
Okay, so
fund.
maybe also this language shouldn't say, but not limited to workforce development, and just for any general basic thing, because that's kind of how the legislation actually reads. So didn't mean to get you there, but once I thought the answer was going to be like, oh yeah, you could deposit it into the general fund. But if it is too loose and there's no logical nexus, then we really should probably tighten up the trust fund language too. So if the logical nexus is required, I didn't think it would be. I thought like, oh, technically we could just deposit things into a general fund, but that's it. Those are clarifying but important for my thinking. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you. Council President Lavelle.
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted a point of clarity that these dollars aren't tax dollars.
No.
It was suggested that these were public dollars. They're actually private dollars that would come in to a fund for expenditure. I just want to make a point of clarity. That's all.
When it becomes public.
Thank you.
Once we have it, it becomes public.
Before I
dollars.
take a motion, I just wanted to also make an observation that this has opened up a conversation around trust funds, and perhaps there are council members who would want to consider making a motion for a post-agenda on trust funds.
I actually have that on my list at the end of the meeting.
Okay, so I will leave there, but do we have a motion on this bill, pardon me, 400? Motion to hold 1 week. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All of those in favor of a 1 week hold on bill 400, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? 1 week hold on bill 400. Thank you. Thank you for the vibrant discussion. Thank you for the helpful answers. We will hold for 1 week. That moves us on to invoices. And I will ask Budget Director, Council Budget Director Pete McDevitt to help us understand one invoice that needs a waiver of council.
I believe it's on the P cards that requires a waiver.
I apologize. I do want to make a note though on, sorry, I have it up here. on the invoices,
Oh.
we do have
Treasure
Lawn
Care.
Care totaling together over $5,000, but they're for separate properties, so we need a waiver for the invoices, pardon me. So, motion to approve invoices.
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Invoices are approved. That moves us on to interdepartmental transfers. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of interdepartmental transfers, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Transfers are approved. That moves us on to P cards.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
You do need to waive the rules. Sorry to interrupt. You do need to waive the rules for this one. There is one transaction for PLI to the Commonwealth. This is a fee that we're required to pay based on permits that we're approving. The only accepted payment that the Commonwealth takes is credit card. And it's not something we can contract for, so the only way to do this is on a P card. I believe it's around $11,000 this time.
$11,286
Yeah.
for
And this does come up quarterly, so you've seen it before and you're going to see it again, but you do need to waive the rules for this.
motion to waive the rules for the P cards.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor of waiving the rules, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Rules are waived, and all those in favor of approving the P cards, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
P cards are approved. Thank you, Budget Director McDevitt.
Thank you.
That
Thank you,
moves us
Director.
on to Public Safety and Wellness Committee chaired by Councilman Coghill.
Bill 392, resolution authorizing the mayor and the Department of Public Safety to receive a grant from the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency in the form of Narcan, fentanyl test strips, and xylene test strips valued at $40,583.50 to be distributed by the Office of Community Health and Safety.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
Let's have, they've waited long enough. I think we should have a discussion with them.
Councilman Charlin.
Well, I was going to call her up anyway for the next bill, so.
Okay.
Blue director.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
Introduce yourself.
Camila Alarcón, Assistant Director of Public Safety, overseeing the Office of Community Health and Safety.
Can you tell us where these test strips are, or where you plan on implementing this, and what the plan is for this? Maybe delineate it a little bit more for us.
Yes, so we usually get our Narcan and our test strips from the health department, but they are giving a lot to the community, and we were just seeing a little bit of lag. Growing demand from actually city council members for Narcan test strips, particularly departments, our park rangers, so we supply them to the lifeguards as well, the pools, park rangers, the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police, PLI has requested, and then in the community just last year all over the city, we provided 1,000 Narcan, and that can be increased with having our own stream from the state versus having to wait for a delimited amount every time we request to the health department. So we would have this in stock. So the test strips are something that have been in demand more, especially as fentanyl and xylazine has increased in our community. I know we provided some to you, Councilperson Charlin, for several establishments in the south side. Yesterday was a little pilot at the north side. We ran out 100 test strips that we had and 75 Narcan. So we're seeing an uptake of what the community is really needing in places that before we weren't getting questions. For example, we had a couple people come to us that live in nursing homes and homes of elderly that they've been seeing more and more overdoses. And to have Narcan with them prevents these fatal overdoses that sometimes EMS might not respond immediately. So this is so that the city can have its own source of Narcan and test strips.
So how are we distributing the testing strips? We've talked a lot at this table over the years. Well, I haven't, but others have talked a lot at this table over the years about Narcan distribution. But I'm really kind of passionate about the testing strip distribution. How are we distributing it? Where are they available? If I would love us to send testing strips with the same way we send out the recycling calendars. I think everyone needs more testing strips. I'm very worried about. Where are they available? How can residents get them? What's the plan for distribution?
Yes, so we had requested almost 50,000 because of that need. There is right now a problem of development because there's so much in need that even nationally, so we only got 5,000 per fentanyl, 5,000 for xylazine. So we have two sources. You can either request them directly to us, but every community event, we have them on our table. So for the Public Health and Safety Fair, we collaborated with Councilperson Gross. We had them there, for example. That was something the frontline workers of those businesses requested. I know Councilperson Warwick as well is doing a health and safety fair, as well as your office, and so we'll have them there. We can't I think that is a great suggestion, which I would love. Unfortunately, because of the high demand, particularly xylazine, that tests for more than just opioids, so they can test for other things that have caused overdoses that are not reversed by Narcan. So they're extremely expensive, and that's why we asked the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency to donate them to us. We will continue to ask to get more and more so that we can continue to fulfill the community needs, but it's a request you do to our office, and we try to fulfill it.
Yeah. I'm a little facetious about sending those out with the mailers, but ultimately I think these need to be more readily available. Am I correct? They're still technically illegal, right?
No, they're legal.
They're legal now.
They're legal
Okay.
now.
Okay.
They were approved as of last year by Pennsylvania, so they're legal right now. So that's
Okay.
why we can have a more ample distribution. Yesterday, we saw a lot of community members who usually tend to assume that test strips are enabling. They now, after education, after trainings, they see the need and have come to us asking us for these test strips. And they were the comments we got is, we can't believe that we're getting these life-saving resources from city government.
I have very little tolerance for people that think that this is enabling. I guess my last question here is just that are we making sure that we're getting the testing strips out to the communities that need them? I know it can be anyone, it can look like anybody, but is the population that we want to make sure we're getting testing strips out to, are they coming to our resource fairs? Are they coming to wherever we might be? Do they know how to interact? Do they know that we have a city government? Are they going to the right places?
Yes, and we created a fact sheet to educate community members as well that you can just take with you if you're not comfortable at that time. But we created that because a lot of the people in our resource fairs, we also partner with the health department to do harm reduction fairs within the city limits, and so we go there and we provide these trainings and these fact sheets. Particularly the post program that's going to be starting in downtown, your district, and Councilperson Coghills. That's something that the team is going to have in hand with them. So that's why we had asked for such a large number, because the teams that are deploying the data shows that overdoses are higher in the downtown Southside Carrick corridor. And so that's why we're going to have our teams also equipped with test strips.
Are we distributing them in camps?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So part of the request was through the Roots program. So their street outreach team always carries with them. So they requested a large amount of test strips because they're doing street outreach. And so they provide these strips among the different camps that are along the trails. So we've been going to the trail on the north side, downtown south side. Doing that kind of like path.
Okay. And, sorry, I said the last question like 3 questions ago. But my concern always with test strips is that, we think about people that are actively using drugs and people in camps, but it's also, the test strips are so important for people that are using maybe marijuana or cocaine, in bars or restaurants, and more of the party drug view than the what we think of as the
People in need.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Are we finding a way to get there? Are we in stage AE? Are we in the concert venues and Heinz Field and wherever else we need to be? Are test strips available there?
Yeah, if we would have been approved the larger amount, that is something why we're gonna ask for more. I think every 6 months we can ask for more to be able to fulfill. So we're doing it through council offices to fulfill those venues if needed. A lot of these places are reluctant to even carry them. I know some of the bars in the South Side weren't really excited to have them. So I think paired with that should be an educational piece on how important and life-saving these can be.
Yeah, I can tell you that the bars that are involved in the Southside Hospitality Partnership were all excited about it. They just wanted to know the right way to do it. Do we distribute it in the bathroom like condoms, or do we distribute it at the bar? How do we do this right?
I think the best way to do it is have it accessible, paired. We also have a card that kind of goes with the test strip so that people know the grades of when fentanyl and xylazine is present so they can make the appropriate decision. We're also seeing this more and more people who might have gotten prescribed some benzos or some opioids for muscles or some injuries. People, when their doctor no longer provide these pills, are now looking exactly like what you would get in the pharmacy, are laced with fentanyl and xylazine. So we're also trying to hit that population through community engagement, particularly the older populations. Yeah.
I can't be more serious about testing your supply, and I just think that's the more outreach we can do on that, the more preventable death we can avoid. So thank you for doing this. I think other members have questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So first of all, I want to thank you, Assistant Director, for the Health and Safety Fair last year, and I encourage other members to do those as well. So in addition to the harm reduction, there was also kind of sexual assault awareness, resources about how to refer people to homelessness, and other city resources, county resources. And so it was broadly about, especially if you are a bartender or a barista or even retail worker, kind of how you've got now better tools so that you can respond to these situations. But the supplies are really great news. And the way I'm reading this is just receiving a grant, right?
Yes.
So you found a grant and applied for it.
Yes.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
Right? Thank you. I appreciate that. We love it that you saw a need and then you found a resource for it. So I think that's wonderful. And we should continue the conversation about kind of how we target, to Councilman Charlin's point, and how we kind of because these needs or kind of focuses kind of change or shift, right? So again, thank you for sort of pointing out to us that our senior centers or our senior housing are sites, and I did not know that they were basically fake pharmaceuticals.
Yes. Yeah.
For sale in the marketplace that are killing people because they're laced with fentanyl and xylazine. Okay. Or the xylazine, could you explain that one more time, actually? You said that this is a new test that can alert you to things that even Narcan wouldn't be able to reverse.
Yeah, so xylazine, fentanyl is the one that can be, was the first test strips. But then we're seeing that because we caught on to that as a country, they were lacing them with other materials that are harder for Narcan to reverse and can't be detected by fentanyl. So then they created these xylazine strips that have a broader spectrum.
So xylazine isn't the bad thing, but it's the test
It tests bad things.
It tests for the bad things, but
Yes.
the xylazine isn't the singular bad thing.
Yeah, so fentanyl is like traditionally what we would test, and xylazine.
And so we call them a test strip for fentanyl.
Yes.
But the xylazine test strips aren't testing for xylazine.
They are.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Okay, I just
Yeah,
wanted to clarify because you were saying there were things, and
It's
I
a
didn't know if there
broader
was
spectrum.
more. There is a broader spectrum.
Yes. It can test for xylazine and
other things.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm following you now. I appreciate that. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions?
Just stay.
Just want to thank you for your work on this, and this is fantastic work, so appreciate it. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. Thank you. Bill 393.
Bill 393, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Public Safety on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh to transfer the ongoing lease agreement with Allegheny Health Network, AHN, to the city as contractually obligated by Controller's Contract Number 54321 for the hub location supporting the Reaching Out on the Streets Roots program. The city will transfer the lease agreement between AHN and Bernie's Photo Center from AHN to the city for the property located at 519 East Ohio Street for the time frame of April 30th, 2024 through September 30th, 2026 for a total cost not to exceed $72,500.
Motion to approve discussion.
Motion to approve discussion.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second?
Yes.
Councilman
thank you.
Coghill.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Alacona. Assistant Director, or is it Director?
It's assistant director.
Okay. I wasn't quite sure.
Nobody's moving.
You know, so the transfer from
I was locked in,
from Allegheny
So
Health
AHN
Network to the
is
city
not
of
gonna pay the
Pittsburgh
rent.
is the
We're paying
lease.
rent
Is the lease for Bernie's Photo Center. That's the owner of the building.
Yes.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, $72,000 over how long of a period?
Until 2026.
2026. So that's 2 years.
2 years.
So it's costing us $35,000 a year to rent.
Yeah, a total by the time the lease ends in September is $72,500. Total.
72.5.
Yeah, total.
And
for
that
the
goes
2
back.
years.
How we already occupy it, correct?
Yes, yes. So this is the East Ohio drop-in site hub where Reaching Out on the Street is currently
Sure.
operating. So
Right.
this is part of the contract that has already been approved.
Right.
We just have to transfer the lease,
Right.
and the money that is going to use is that ARPA funding, liquidating that money to support that.
Okay, and this is not our only brick and mortar. We have
We
other
have two
services.
others.
Two others. One is in the south side.
One is in East Liberty.
East Liberty, yeah.
It serves East Liberty, Lincoln, Larimer, and Homewood, and then we have another one downtown.
Okay, and how are they being run? Are they busy or?
Yes, they're very busy.
People are there daily from the Roots program.
Yes, so we have from 150 to 200 people. We currently only operate from 12:30 to 3 because we had, as we were
I'm
transferring.
sorry, wait, 150 to 200 people daily visits?
Daily visits.
Okay.
In 3 hours. We're going to expand those hours.
That's in a 3-hour period?
In a 3-hour period.
Per brick and mortar?
Per.
You're averaging 150 visits per
To 200.
3 hours?
3 hours.
And what are they coming there for?
So, a whole range of services. But the great thing about these hubs is that each day there's a different service. So one day the Allegheny Link will come and do assessments to get people into housing. Another day the veterinary services will be there. Another day street medicine will be there providing wound care or any other medical needs. There's also a psychiatrist that comes to help people with their prescriptions because a lot of the healthcare systems are refusing to do some of these prescriptions for people. They're not as low barrier. We also do eye exams, so people living outside particularly have a huge challenge with vision and getting glasses and their needs.
So how many people do you have at each location?
So we currently, the reason why we were only open 2 hours is once it transferred to the city, a lot of people decided they didn't want to be city employees. So what we did now, you all approved it last year, was to have these sites at full capacity. So each zone has 5 people. So that means a team lead, a site manager, a site support, but it's crucial to also have 2 other people that are on the street. So they're going to the camps. They're going to the different places to provide support. So that's a community health worker and a street outreach person.
Okay, well, I want to get into the encampments in a minute, but so those 5 people per brick and mortar place see 150 people, and they address them, they talk, and they satisfy their needs?
Yes. So
that's hard to imagine, but over a 3-hour period.
Yeah, it's very traditional for the social service sector. We would like to have more people, but that's just what budget allowed.
Sure.
But they have been doing this with 2 people.
Wow, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, and getting back to the Roots program.
Yes.
Is it Ben still with you?
Yes, Ben is the program manager.
Okay, so I want to touch base with you on, it was, oh gosh, had to be 6 months ago, I'll bet you, that myself, you, Councilwoman Gross, Director Schmidt, Ben.
Yes.
And I can't remember who else was in that meeting, but we were discussing how to, come up with various ways as to how we tackle the encampments and the homeless problem, right?
Yeah.
So I found you so enlightening. I thought you were full of energy, and I thought you were ready to go. That being said, I'm very disappointed. I have not heard from you. We have not discussed this issue. Have you had discussions with the administration about alternative housing for the people that are in encampments? Are you working on something? Or?
Yeah, so our office, the reason why we haven't reached out about the program is because we were told it was going through a city code process.
No. Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's initially. I'm talking before that process. We initiated that process.
Yes. The administration has told us that they're opening 500, it's called 500 days, 500 units of affordable housing, as well as revisiting that idea of the locations that would have more transitional housing. So as I mentioned, even with the 2 encampments closures that we had downtown, when we surveyed the population, they want transitional housing. They no longer want to be in shelters. We had shelter beds held, and they want transitional housing, but supportive transitional housing. So the problem that we have right now with some of these county transitional housings is that they don't have the supports needed for the population. So the population fails and they're back out and the cycle continues. So we have suggested always through our office, if you're going to create a transitional housing, there has to be social workers, there has to be case managers.
We're well aware.
Yeah.
Trust me, I understand exactly what you're saying, and that was our thought process as well.
Yeah.
So, let me just ask you, have you discussed with the administration an alternative? Now, as you know, we had a committee on council, and we came up with 3 different concepts, right?
Yeah.
We went over that with you, I think, in
Yes.
previous meetings. Beyond that, Councilwoman Gross and I had come up with 2 or 3 other alternatives, right? One of those alternatives were the tiny managed sites, right? Have you had discussions with the administration about that?
About the tiny, I think what the information they told us is that they're working with you all.
The administration told you that they're working with us?
Well, I thought that's what we were working with the zoning and the planning to determine.
Well, the zoning is one thing, right? However, we've had no discussions with the administration exactly as to alternatives, whether it be tiny managed homes or, other sites. And that's what I'm asking you. Have you discussed with the administration?
I've asked to meet with Kyle, who does most of the housing conversations, and we're going to meet soon to discuss of the options. Our office mainly does support services, and we advise. So some of the information we provided is the same that we gave you all, that we need this transitional housing with supportive systems. I know there's a plan for a downtown project.
What downtown project?
A downtown project to hopefully have affordable housing.
well, I don't want to get off on affordable housing. We're looking really for single-room occupancy.
Yep.
You know, I'm focusing
Yep.
basically on addressing the encampments and the homeless needs, right?
Yep.
So, again, when you and I first talked and when we met at my office, I was extremely encouraged because I felt you were kind of on the same track as we were, right? And again, since then, I feel like I haven't heard or seen you anywhere. And, you know, we even discussed at that meeting, we're going to follow up, we're going to talk about it, whether it be, I'm not specifically pointing towards tiny, you know, tiny homes, right? I'm looking towards any and everything else.
Of course.
Since then, we've not had any discussion other than the zoning.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. I'm talking about alternatives, ideas as to where we would go next.
Yeah.
You seem to be encouraged by, you know, I felt, at least at that time, by our ideas, at least, you know, looking at them. Has the administration, have you and the administration talked about creating tiny managed zones?
We haven't had those conversations recently. We just have had the conversations that it's going to be discussed if it's even possible to do that due to zoning and code.
So you've not, of course, and that's, you know, we're in the middle of that, of course, and we hope that comes to fruition. But my question is, since the time we met in my office 6 months ago, a lot of time elapsed. The zoning just came up a month ago or so, right? But the time frame from when we met in our office and the time when we put in the zoning legislation, have you had talks with the administration about tiny managed zones for?
So that's not really something that our office is focusing on right now, just because, as you know, in the winter.
Because it's not a reality. I mean, at this point.
It's just beyond what we could decide as an office. We couldn't make a decision if we would have to go through the appropriate channels, which.
So you haven't had the conversation?
The only conversations I've had is about it has to go through zoning to even consider it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, we have a lot of urgent needs that we're
yeah, I
responding
understand
to,
you're
so.
much more involved in just getting people out of the encampments. I understand that. But I also understand that the administration, if they're working on an alternative plan that we are not privy to, they need your services to be on ground floor here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we met. That's why we were talking, because you were to be a big part of this.
Yeah, we try to advise, given our expertise. So we did reach out to different places in Seattle, LA, and Denver. So we just provide advice like we did with both of you, because we can't really make those decisions as an office. We can only provide what those tiny managed communities would need to thrive.
No, I get it. Whether we go with the plans we came up with, whether we go with the administration's plans, you have to be part of it. The roots operation has to be part of it. This is essential.
I agree.
Okay,
I agree with
great,
that.
great.
I agree with that.
And you have not been instructed not to speak to us about such a
No,
thing.
no, never.
Okay, okay. I just have to be clear because
Yes, of course.
I've had no communication with the administration on these things. And since our last conversation, since our meeting, again, I don't even know how many months ago it was, 6 months ago at least.
Yeah.
I was disappointed, number one, not to hear from the administration. And again, I found you really refreshing. I'm sorry?
You can have them come to the table.
I don't
I wouldn't do it now.
yeah. No, we're going to probably have a post agenda on it anyway, but, you know, I'm just trying to figure out who's working where, okay? When we talked, again, Director Schmidt, we seem to all be on the same page, at least solving the problem, not necessarily one concept or the other, but just being involved, just being, you know, direct with each other as to how we come up with solutions. I, again, am disappointed that even, just you even, right? You don't have to go through the administration to talk to us about these things.
No,
okay.
not at all.
So, you know, since that time, it's disappointing at the disengagement, whether it be from your office, and the administration, and I could probably go on and on. So, okay, well, we'll get to the bottom of that. I just wanted to make sure you didn't know of any alternative plans the administration was working on. You do not.
Yeah.
You've not been part of any of those talks.
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Wilson, followed by Councilwoman Gross.
Okay, I just have a tiny question. This,
No pun intended.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize for stepping on your committee
No, you
here.
said
I
Tony's
just
question.
said it.
I said no pun intended.
Yeah, no, I know. I wasn't joking around. I'm just kidding. So, yeah, I just jumped out in front of this because the lease is on East High Street in my district, and I was just anticipating just asking the one question: what's the reason for the transfer?
Because it used to be with AHN, and because of the contract that we sign, everything has to be transferred to the city of Pittsburgh.
What contract did you sign?
The contract that you all approved with the Roots contract to transition contract number 54321.
Okay.
I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you just refresh me on how this relates to that?
Yeah, so the contract, among other things, said that the Roots program was going to get out of AHN, the health network, and be part of the city. So that means that AHN obviously is not responsible for the Roots program anymore, but the city. And that's part of those ARPA funds.
Okay. And since it's not, AHN won't have any affiliation with it, you see any challenges with that since they provided the, healthcare arm of it?
No, we don't have any challenges with that. We have every weekly meetings with their leadership to tell them what we need from their side. So, for example, street medicine will continue to go there. Their benefits coordinator will continue to go there.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So, Assistant Director, I appreciate hearing an update about all the work that's been and the demand for the services. And again, I just kind of have to impress the two members of the public, and I do this in conversations, in my district all the time, is that the city doesn't get a single penny of the $1 billion of social services that the Allegheny County gets every year. Every year. It's been said before at this table, but I can't help myself from reminding the public every time that we have these conversations. We're not the county, we're not like a mini county. We literally have different powers and different revenue streams. And the county, Allegheny County, gets all of the federal funds for social services, for the addiction services, for the homeless services, for mental health, all of that money, $1 billion or so in the Department of Human Services every year. And we get zero. So we are just requesting support from the county, and that we're using funds now, including the $72,000, right? This is our city revenue.
It's from the ARPA dollars.
So still, city revenue that could be used, could have been using payroll for environmental services or lifeguards or anything else, right? So, when those ARPA dollars run out, which will be soon, we'll be still paying this lease, I assume, right? This is a 2-year lease, which is great. And it's not AHN paying it. They were paying it, and now we're going to be paying it. And all of the workers that are expanding at the locations, which is clearly needed, very obviously helping people with their lives, helping them stay alive, helping them get off the streets, helping them just even with street medicine.
Yep.
Because I thought I heard you say, and so I just want to clarify, they have tried going to the hospital, nonprofits, all of our hospitals are nonprofits, and were rejected. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure I follow that, right? So we have people who are living outdoors. They go into a hospital because they have a wound, an injury,
Yeah.
so any kind of health, actual medical problem.
We've seen medical needs. People, particularly living outside, are less and less accessing hospitals. We're currently doing data research because hospitals are flagging people without cause, and a lot of the people might have some warrants or they might be in a drug program, and so they're unwilling to go to the hospitals because they're scared.
You jumped over a little bit for me there. What do you mean flagging?
So we have found that nurses with security in the hospitals are running people which they shouldn't. And then people are aftered instead of transported, or our social worker can go and continue to provide support, are transported to jail.
I apologize for being so slow here, but I'm just really trying to. So when you say they have access to security and they're running people, they literally are checking like the police records.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of like, and so it's our police records.
No, yes, it's public. They have the UPMC police can access warrants. These can be different warrants, or if they're in a drug and overdose program within the hospital, they get different treatment, stigma. So this is why a lot of people refuse to go to the hospital, and there's such a big need due to the stigma to have street medicine. So that's why UPMC, AHN have now street medicine teams.
Okay, but this is we're paying the people. We're paying for the locations for them to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the street medicine people, we're not paying them. They're actually, this is the street medicine team.
We're not paying the street medicine
But we're
team.
paying for the location where they are.
No, we have access to them because of the relationships we've developed so that they could come to the sites as well as they go to different camps.
They do. So the street medicine teams, who are like salaried workers by the hospitals,
yes,
are out at the encampments or just out on the street, but then also coming to the facilities that we're paying the rent for.
Yes.
Okay. This is a lot, and it's constantly shifting. So I think it's really important. It's definitely changed since we started talking about the Roots program a few years ago, where we received $5 million from AHN. Is that correct?
We received $5 million from the emergency fund.
Oh no! And we gave it to AHN.
Mm-hmm.
So again, in that situation, thank you for clarifying, because I actually had reversed the situation in my mind. We, in part of the $335 million ARPA COVID relief funds that we got through the local development help, I forget, SLRF fund, I forget what it was called, gave $5 million to AHN.
Well, that $5 million is ours.
And so we took it back?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And that's what's paying here?
Yes, that's what's paying the
all right,
leases.
so again, this is, it's on the record. Thankfully, we can all look back and see how we amended those contracts. And back to the kind of emergency housing just for a moment. I also heard you say, and what council has been saying, and so it's good to have someone who's more expert than we are, because we're not experts in everything. We get to have to discuss many different kinds of things. And I think council consistently said this for the full 2 years that we've been really all seeing people, and the outdoor population increases, that people need supportive transitional housing. Transitional housing, I'm just going to qualify because I always just refer to the Housing and Urban Development website definition, which just says you're placed in that housing for up to 24 months. So a caseworker puts you into that kind of housing. It's not housing that you opt into yourself. It's not you building your own shack. That's not supportive transitional housing. It's not even the temporary managed community zoning that we propose to make a clearer path to be able to do it legally in the city. Also requires that there be a kind of operator for the site, and that those kinds of social services are supportive. Sometimes people have misunderstood it to be kind of like DIY housing, which it is not, right? That there be 24-hour a day social services on site. And so I'm glad to hear you say that. I also heard that you say that you provided a report to the administration.
No, we've just been doing our own gathering.
Your own gathering? And
information gathering.
And how are you kind of conveying it, and to whom?
We were just calling different sites to see how these managed communities were, and we can share that with you all as well.
I would be, yes, please. I would just, it helps for us all to understand the same things instead of each having kind of different sources of information. I believe I thought it was a report because I think we were told almost a year ago that, or certainly in 2023, that you and Ben were working on it, and we didn't see anything. And it was referred to kind of like a memo. Maybe it's just a working memo, maybe it's just a set of notes.
Working memo,
that would be fine. As long as I think it's helpful for us to read the same things. And similarly, we've tried to provide every kind of all of the stuff when we worked on the committee together and provided to council kind of all of the background materials. If any member wants to read more, so we all are understanding the same things, I think we've got it all kind of organized in a shared file, and we can do that. So that's what I wanted to clarify, because we still are in the middle of this kind of arm wrestling over it. And as a reminder, we know that about 120 or 150 cities have used kind of temporary communities, both indoor and outdoor. So they're not all tiny houses. Sometimes it's converting a motel. Sometimes it's converting an office building. Sometimes it's literally kind of using temporary structures in an office building shell, right? And so you have your own door you can lock. You have safety. And that is healing into itself, is what we're hearing repeatedly, right? Yeah. That the danger and risk that people are in outdoors is not easy, and it doesn't help them get their lives back. And so every step that we can take to help people get what they need helps them get their life back. So, okay, I'll stop my comments there. I appreciate it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councilman Charlin.
Just real quickly here, you know, I every time we talk about the Roots program, I've got to bring this up. We talked with the last bill about how many overdoses we're seeing and the kind of issues we're seeing in South Pittsburgh. And want to reiterate, the Roots program does not exist in South Pittsburgh. We do not cross the river. We do not come into my district at all, Councilman Coggill's district, or Councilwoman Cale Smith's district at all. This body moved the money in 2021 so that we could expand Roots into our districts, and we still do not have any city-funded services providing homeless services to our districts, you know, at all at this point. My only sources of refuge right now are Bridge to an extent and Unity Recovery, and that's really all I've got in terms of homeless services. But we have, you know, this contract here, and you know, we're looking at a lot of money that we're sitting on, and a lot of need that is unfulfilled. So
yeah,
that's my point there.
Yeah. We did apply for funding to open a hub in the South Side area to benefit those districts. I know that because it's immediate need, so as everybody works through how we can access those funds, we know there's a need, so that's why we applied to a grant in order to have another hub. And I know there's questions about what's going to happen after the 2 years. I'll be up a lot this year because we've applied and gotten a lot of grants. We don't want to be a burden on our city budget, and we've seen other cities really have sustainability with this programs to fund through grants or through DHS, the Department of Human Services. So I understand. We also have been supporting a lot of the requests from your office of unhoused because we know how much you need them.
Yeah, and I guess, and that's where I, you know, get even more frustrated, is that we're applying for more grants and need more money, but we had the money. The money was allocated in the fall of 2021, and then it just wasn't a priority come January 2022. So, January 2023. No, 2022. I apologize. I'm screwing my years up here. Yeah, but why it wasn't a priority to expand into the area of most need here. And now we've seemed to have spent the money, and now we need more money so that we can bring this into where we're most needed. You know, continues to frustrate me, and is a real disservice to residents of South Pittsburgh. And you know, it's not where I think our priority should be.
I agree. I wasn't here. There was someone previous to me, so I had to completely restructure a lot of the office and how it looked and how we could access the funds. The way the contract was negotiated by previous leadership made it so that it's really hard for my office to access those funds. Believe me, if I could access those funds, I would have a Roots hub in every place we need it the most. So I have requested meetings to see how best we can access those funds.
Yeah. I need it to be a priority. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any further comments?
Who it was?
Seeing none, all
Can
those.
I just want to say
Councilman-
thank you to Ricky Moody, who's helped us. He's no longer with us, and to Laura Dragowski before you. But I have had some conversations with you, and Director Schmitz are always available when we call. So I just want to make sure I acknowledge that. But I do want to see some of the resources in our area. But so far, whenever I've needed you, you have responded. So I just want to make sure that I acknowledge you and your workers for the good response. I understand what you're saying, but I also want to make sure that, because there have been times, especially in Mount Washington, you've really helped us. So thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of Bill 393, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
That moves us on to Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, chaired by Councilperson Warwick.
Bill 402, Resolution amending Resolution 302 of 2022, which provided for a professional services agreement with Binkley, Canavi, or agreements or existing agreements for costs associated with consulting services, printing and mailing the popular annual financial report, but not limited to auditing, accounting, and technical services for the City Controller's Office at a cost not to exceed $19,100 for 1 year.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Discussion?
What is it? Yeah, could you just tell me again real briefly?
This is,
Is there somebody here, or do you want to just tell me? Did you want to say?
Councilwoman Cale Smith.
I'm sorry.
Discussion?
Yeah, no, I'm just curious what exactly it is. I don't think I've ever seen this.
I don't think I have this in front of me right now. I'm looking at the one.
Out of order?
That's okay.
Public
I'll
Works
just,
402.
We're in Bill, what do you have? 402. Yeah.
402.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the one you read, though.
I didn't think so. Right.
Was read.
What did I read?
Resolution amending.
Amending Resolution 657.
That's what I have in front of me.
Yeah, this is something different. Give me 1 second.
There is an error on the attachment.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up.
I don't know what people have written.
it's under Barb's committee.
Bill 402, Resolution amending Resolution 657 of 2022, which provided for an amended reimbursement agreement or agreements with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for costs associated with the preliminary design, final design, and right-of-way phases of the Swindell Bridge construction project, and providing for the payment of the cost thereof not to exceed $3,800,000, an increase of $2,100,000 from the previously executed agreement, reimbursable at 95%, and a municipal share of Commonwealth incurred costs not to exceed $7,000, $5,500 increase from the previously executed agreement.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I have in front of me too, so. Motion to approve?
Second.
Second.
Discussion? Councilman Wilson.
Just want to make a point that one of the attachments is just related to the term in gardens. So we just need
Yeah,
to.
that is incorrect as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 402, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation. That moves us on to land use and economic.
I'll abstain today till we get this. Did you say something needs changed?
An attachment.
Yeah, I'll abstain till the attachment's added. Thank you.
Land use and economic development committee chaired by Councilman Wilson.
Bill 403, ordinance accepting a new street name, Terman Garden Circle, in the 27th Ward of the City of Pittsburgh, as per recommendation by the City of Pittsburgh Addressing Committee. The following street name was approved by CPAC in March 2024. The name listed in this ordinance shall be made official in accordance with the Pittsburgh Code, Title IV, Public Places and Property, Chapter 420, Uniform Street Naming and Addressing.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Affirmative recommendation. That moves us on to Innovation, Performance, Asset Management, and Technology Committee, chaired by Councilwoman Gross.
Bill number 394, resolution authorizing the mayor and the director of the Department of Innovation and Performance on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh to enter into an agreement or agreements or amendments thereto with Crayon Software Experts, LLC, for a Microsoft Enterprise Agreement in order to provide software licensing and support and to provide fixed true-up pricing for Microsoft's complete catalog of available products for each year of the contract at a cost not to exceed $5,335,326 over 3 years.
Second.
With discussion, Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I ask the director to the table? I appreciate it. I appreciate the weekly briefings that we get from the Department of Innovation and Performance, and yet I believe that the director will explain it better than I will. So I appreciate it. Just identify yourselves for the record.
Good afternoon, Heidi Norman, Director of the Department of Innovation and Performance.
I'm Gwendolyn Moore, Assistant Director, Business Technology, Innovation, and Performance.
Thank you also for sitting through those lengthy discussions to get to the bill here. And I'll just ask you to give a brief overview, and then I'll open it up for questions.
So our Microsoft Enterprise Agreement supplies all of the Microsoft applications that you and your staffs are using, as well as the rest of the organization. And this went to RFP. We had a number of respondents. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 respondents. And the winner of the award was Crayon Software Experts, LLC. It is spelled Crayon, just like you think it might be spelled, but it is a completely different company. It's the name of the company. And they were all bidding on the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement. So we have a clear awardee. And we are asking for authorization to enter into a 3-year agreement with them. It's a total of $5.3 million, a little under $1.8 million per year over the next 3 years.
Thank you. I think that was very succinct. I've said it, I think, recently, but I'll say it again. I really appreciate how methodically IMP is moving through reevaluating our software packages that we've frankly purchased a lot of over the last 10 years or so, and seeing kind of how we go out to bid with those software systems without shutting down operations or losing functionality, and in many cases even improving functionality. So I'll just stop there. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion, questions? Council President Lavelle.
Thank you. Quick question. Were any of the respondents minority-owned companies?
I'm sorry, were any of them?
Minority-owned companies?
No.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I'm glad an RFP went up.
Seeing none, all those in favor of Bill 394, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Affirmative recommendation.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our agenda. We do have a number of meeting announcements. This afternoon, which was supposed to occur today at 12:30, we will actually be going straight into this for anyone who's able to. Council is holding an executive session on some of the bills that were discussed today, as well as others, bills 398, 399, and 419 as they relate to litigation matters. So right after this. Also this afternoon at 1:30 p.m., Council will hold a Cablecast public hearing on Bill 2024-277 relative to removing the Riverview... Did they again? Review of sidewalk cafes from the zoning code. Speaker registration will close has closed already. Then at 2:30 p.m., Council will hold a Cablecast post-agenda discussion on the Affordable Housing Bond Spending Plan, chaired by Council President Lavelle. Next week, Council will hold their regular and standing committees meetings Tuesday, May 7th and Wednesday, May 8th at 10 a.m. respectively. Registration ends at 9 a.m. the morning of each meeting. To register to speak at these council meetings and hearings, please fill out the sign-up form in its entirety at the council meeting webpage. You may also register by calling the city clerk's office at 412-255-2138. Can I please get is there any comment or discussion from council members?
Yeah. Thank you.
Councilwoman Cale Smith, followed by Councilman
Go ahead,
Cockrell.
ladies, before.
Yes, absolutely.
I just want to call for a cablecast post agenda on grants and trust funds in the city of Pittsburgh.
Second.
All those in favor of a cablecast post agenda on seating?
Grants and
Grant
trust funds.
fundings and trust funds, yeah.
Grants. Please indicate by saying aye.
Hoping we can have it as one. We may need two, but okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We will get that scheduled. Councilman Coghill, followed by Councilman Wilson.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind members who lie in the path of the marathon that will be, I believe, Saturday, to try to post it, because they're having a hard time posting as to, used to be parking meters, and it was obvious that don't park here. They put, bright neon signs there. So they're, sometimes, last year I think they had 300 and some vehicles they had to tow. They ran out of space to tow them. We don't want them to be towed, and we certainly don't want our constituents calling us and, being upset last year there was a lot of remarks that it wasn't posted. So we're just trying to we told Bob McGann from McGann and Chester that we would make every effort for those of you who lie in the path to put on your social media or put it on your neighborhood pages as to remind people, please don't park during the hours that are stated, because you will be towed. So just try to save everybody a little bit of aggravation.
Thank you. Councilman Wilson.
There's been some discussion about removing Riverview. I just want to make sure that I never have to motion to, stop that. So appreciate it.
Councilwoman
Appreciate
Gross.
the humor.
Councilwoman Gross.
I just wanted to follow up on Councilman Coghill's comments. So because the marathon is Sunday morning, very bright and early, which is, what is that, May 5th?
5th.
Move your car before 11 p.m. Saturday, May 4th. So if you're on one of those busy streets that are on the thoroughfare of the marathons, it's especially difficult for those of us that represent part of the business districts, especially where people are maybe out at a restaurant or actively still kind of at their destination. If your car is there, it's going to get towed. So park it somewhere else, or don't take your car if you're going out to one of those main street destinations like Liberty Avenue and Bloomfield. And so when you maybe arrive and put your car someplace, when you come out after your evening's done, your car might be gone. So do not park on those streets. And again, just to kind of elaborate, you used to be warned because we had parking meters in front of each parking place, and it would have said, don't park here. But there aren't parking meters now because of the app. So we just want to make sure that the public understands that you have to move your car before Saturday at 11 p.m. because those tow trucks will be coming through. So appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Kell-Smith.
I'm sorry. I don't want to keep everyone real long. I just want to say real quickly that I apologize for not being here today for the interviews for city planning. I will follow up with the interviewees myself and talk to them. I was actually at a hearing today for a household that had about 13 squatters in the household, and they a lot of the residents and police have accused them of breaking into homes and vehicles, not homes, vehicles and drug activity and all kinds of things across the southwest Pittsburgh area, and I believe so in all of our districts. And so the magistrate heard loud and clear from the residents that came in to testify, including, I want to thank the landlord and the property owner for being good stewards of the property and making sure they pursued everything through the legal avenues, and the magistrate has acted on it and turned the property back over to the landlord. So it shows what happens when people speak up and get involved in what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you for your work on that. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes and adjourn the meeting?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.